Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. If you're searching for an incredible novel, check out my Patreon page. Your support will help transform this story into an exciting audiobook. Join me on this adventure. By becoming a Patreon member, you'll be helping me keep creating and bringing this content to life. Thank you for being part of the journey.
Chapter 21. V.1, C.21 Phantom Menace 7. Back on the outskirts of Mos Espa, the ship used to transport the escapees of Naboo is currently undergoing some repairs. Obi-Wan walks towards Kagan, who is sitting upon the camel-like creature, as Kagan directs a statement towards him. Well, we have all the essential parts we need. I am going back. I have some unfinished business. I won't be long. Obi-Wan replies with some annoyance heard in his voice. Why do I sense we have picked up another pathetic life form? It's the boy who's partially responsible for getting us these parts. The boy's mother wouldn't have helped us without the little push provided by him. Kagan continues. Get this hyperdrive generator installed. Yes, Master, it shouldn't take long. Obi-Wan says. Kagan leaves while riding the creature and dragging along another. Kagan had gone back to get the answer from Anakin about his decision to leave Tatooine and come with him. At the Skywalker residence, there are 3 people currently within a conversation between the 3. I wonder what choice the boy will make. He has everything he needs or could possibly want in life by being here, but I have to insist that there is something special about him and take him to be trained as a Jedi. So, Anakin, have you made your decision? I am unsure about everything to do with the Jedi, but there must be something that I could hope to accomplish by going there? For what reason would I go? Shmi is conflicted over the situation wherein she would like Anakin to follow whatever dreams that may be. He has been stuck with her practically all his life, and she could tell he wanted to go places. To see the stars. No matter how much he had tried to hide these desires, they were seen through by her. Mother's instinct at its finest. Anakin, I think you should join. It may not provide everything you have here, or may not have everything you like, but is it not a part of your dream to have adventures? Shmi questions her son. That is true, Mother, but I believe there is still much more here I could do. That is not true, and you know it. Everything here can be taken care of by myself or by any of our employees. There is no need for you to stay with me any longer. That is quite depressing. Despite having increased her confidence, it seems Shmi doesn't believe she could give me everything a mother could. Technically, it is true she cannot give me everything, but she has done her very best despite the circumstances. Anakin thinks to himself. Kagan speaks up. Again, the choice is all yours, Anakin. There are a lot of things that Anakin could do without the Jedi, but he would not be able to truly have a proper master to learn from. No matter all the holocrons, no matter all the knowledge, all he had to work with was his own raw power, potential, and creativity. No matter, all the talent in the world would be wasted without some effort, and being omniscient would be near completely useless without the power or the omniscience to back yourself up. To protect oneself from those who wish to use your knowledge for their own purposes. Anakin is well aware of the fact that without a proper master to teach him, it would take a long time to properly do anything right when utilizing the Force. What he had been practicing again was only been able to be achieved through luck. It was basically plot armor helping him along get a greater start, and the fact he was reborn as Anakin speaks to the fact that he may very well be relying on his talent too much. He needed to make groundwork in other areas as well. There were truly a lot of people more powerful than himself at many points throughout history despite the immense potential that Anakin had. No one should be able to surpass. No one from the future and technically no from the past as well, but the original had failed or more like was kept in check and held back. Anakin does not intend to make the same mistakes. When in doubt, trust the Force, a lot of people would say. It is a guiding energy that tells and communicates to living sentient beings with a soul what to do and what not to do. Albeit it is much more nuanced, but the Force, or at least Anakin's connection, should allow him some leeway into if his decision to join should not be done. Closing his eyes for a split, asking his question, his energy resonates within the cosmic force, allowing him to see if the Force itself thinks his decision is appropriate. What he gets is silence. I guess this choice is truly all on me then. I think that I will come with you. I believe that it is the right decision to join the Jedi. Anakin reasoned that he would be able to leave the Order just as others were able to, so it wouldn't be a problem if he joined. There were restrictions, of course, but that wouldn't stop him from doing the things he planned out. Anakin was very ambitious after all. He doesn't have to tell the Jedi everything or reveal the true extent of what he is capable of. What military might he commands, the connections he has. Nothing. Kagan, still smiling, nods his head in agreement with Anakin's choice. Then I think you should pack your things. We haven't much time before we have to leave. Kagan, just behind Anakin, speaks up as Shmi finishes. Anakin decides to make haste just like he said, but instead of packing his things because he has already prepared in advance, he is to send out some orders to take care of a thug. Originally Shmi would have been left a slave here on Tatooine and would have died having never seen her son before the eve of her death. This much has changed and she could now potentially visit and communicate with him as much as she would like to in the future. For now it would be best to leave her with someone who would help and care for her. There are not many people that Anakin could trust and she has no significant other of her own. C-3PO could definitely stay behind and help her, but it won't replace the loneliness she would feel. Who says I would be unable to visit her as well? The Jedi certainly would not be able to because I am going of my own volition, and have the knowledge I could leave whenever I want. Anakin thinks to himself. After Anakin leaves the room, Shmi and Kagan begin to converse. Thank you. Shmi says. I will watch out for him. You have my word. Kagan promises, knowing that and seeing the conflict on Shmi's face. After a small pause, Kagan continues, placing his hand on her shoulder. Will you be all right? Yes, I will be fine. I have my own freedoms as well. Just as Anakin is going his own way, I may go on my own because change cannot be stopped, just as the setting to the sun cannot be frozen. Shmi says more to herself than Kagan. Anakin has all of his essentials packed away into a backpack and is trailing behind Kagan as they set off past the Skywalker residence. Anakin stops for a moment, looking back at his mother and then to Kagan before rushing towards Shmi, giving her a warm hug. No dialogue is exchanged between the two as Anakin is secure in his decision, while Shmi is also sure that he is needed elsewhere. Shmi whispers. Be brave, Ani. Don't look back and go. Why is she making this exit so dramatic? It is not like I won't be able to see her again. I am not stupid enough to just stay with the Jedi. I have my entire life ahead of me. Anakin thinks to distract himself from getting trapped in the fields. I knew this was my decision, but man, it still sucks when it comes down to it. Even if the circumstances are different between myself and the original, I think this moment still hits the same. Anakin continues before saying, Mum, I will never forget you and you could always visit me or I will visit you. All I know is that this is not the last time we will see each other. Anakin smiles at his mother as she also smiles back at him with watery eyes before letting go of their embrace. Anakin turns towards Kagan and walks away as Kagan also turns around, uncomfortable with disturbing the touching moment between the two. With nothing more left to say, the two head off into the streets of Mos Espa, and while doing so Anakin and Kagan come across the same old lady that Anakin had come to think of as a grandmother. Wait a minute. Jira could stay with my mother. The two know of each other and are friends as well. It is not a replacement for myself, but it is better than having no one. Moving over towards Jira, Anakin begins to speak. Jira, I am leaving Tatooine. Ani? Really? Let me give you a hug. Sure, and one more thing. I would ask of you to help keep my mother some company. I would greatly appreciate it. Oh, I will miss you, Ani. You are the kindest boy in the galaxy. I know, Jira, I know. Anakin finishes off for her. Smiling, Jira continues. You take care now. Don't worry about your mother. She will be just fine, especially with everything she has now. Thanks, Jira. You also take care. Maybe I will see you again sometime. I am not too sure about that. He, not with my old bones. As Anakin is conversing with Jira, the floating droid used by the apprentice Darth Maul makes its appearance again and notices Kagan Jinn, one of its targets. Anakin goes back towards Kagan as the droid also trails along just behind them. Anakin and Kagan are walking alongside each other before Kagan very quickly pulls out his lightsaber and destroys the droid. Slicing it in half, Anakin decides to ask the same question the original did. What is it? But then decides to add his own input as well. I thought I had sensed something following us. Kagan kneels down to get a better look at the thing. It is a probe droid. Very unusual. Pausing and looking around himself, Kagan continues. Not like anything I have seen before. Kagan gestures Anakin to run. Come on. Back with the apprentice Darth Maul, a probe comes forwards towards him, seemingly giving him information about something. Maul's face turns stoic with some anger brewing behind his eyes, turns around, walks straight towards a bike and hops on. Maul ignites the engines and is off into Mos Espa with the probe droid left behind at his ship. Back in the outskirts nearing the ship, Anakin and Kagan have nearly made it, but before reaching the ship, Kagan, and secretly along with Anakin, sense the approach of another individual. Anakin thinks to himself. That must be Maul. What a timely appearance he has made. Dodging the bike speeder by ducking down and rolling away before Kagan says anything, Maul zooms right past him. Anakin, go. Tell them to take off. Kagan explains to Anakin. Deciding to listen to Kagan, Anakin gets up off of the sand and rushes towards the ship as the two Force-sensitive individuals engage in a show of lightsaber combat. Kagan is on the defensive while Darth Maul is aggressively pursuing Kagan, having his anger duel his attacks. Qui-Gon's in trouble. The The guard Captain Panika says, entering the room where Obi-Wan is with Anakin following them in. Obi-Wan goes forward and says, "Take off." Anakin just decides to sit back and wait, but if anything were to go wrong he would try using some of his telekinetic abilities to make sure Kagan doesn't die. That is the least I could do for the guy, because even though he didn't free me this time, he would have done so for the original, which is enough for me to decide to assist him. Obi-Wan points in another direction, just close enough to the two doing battle. "Over there, fly low." The ship powers up with the landing gear still out, with the pilot moving the ship over to the location directed towards. Seeing the ship coming next to them, Kagan disengages from Maul and jumps onto the still open docking ramp. The ship moves up into the atmosphere of Tatooine, leaving behind the Sith apprentice Darth Maul. Within the ship, exhausted, Kagan falls backwards towards the ground as he turns off his lightsaber. Obi-Wan along with Anakin rush into the area, with both of them not saying a word but rushing towards Kagan to check if he is injured. "I think so," Kagan says, catching his breath. "What was it?" Obi-Wan curiously asks and kneels down to eye level with his master. "I am not sure." Still trying to catch his breath, he continues. "But it was well trained in the Jedi arts." Anakin silently thinks. "I am not so sure you can call everything Force-related a Jedi thing, but whatever floats your boat. My guess is, it was after the Queen." Kagan finishes. Anakin decides to ask a question at the forefront of his mind. "So what are we going to do about it?" Kagan responds. "We should be patient." Kagan then motions to Anakin and Obi-Wan. "Anakin Skywalker, meet Obi-Wan Kenobi." Kagan introduces the two each other. "Hello. You must be a Jedi as well, right?" Anakin says. Obi-Wan is a bit confused, asking, "Wait, you are the 9-year-old kid my master was talking about? You look like you're around 12 years of age." Obi-Wan exclaims in slight surprise, not thinking the child would look like this. "I get that a lot. It is a pleasure to meet you." Anakin wryly smiles while thinking, "I know that people will continuously be surprised, but I can't help but think it is funny to see the looks on people's faces when I tell them I am actually only 9 or any of the other ages in the last 5 years. The ship has successfully left the atmosphere, is repaired and fully prepared to reach its target. Chapter 22. V.1, C.22 Phantom Menace 8. Day Cycle. Coruscant. Within the Jedi High Council's conference room, the Jedi Masters are having a meeting with Kagan and his Padawan Obi-Wan. Kagan was speaking about his encounter on Tatooine. He was trained in the Jedi arts. "My only conclusion can be that it was a Sith Lord." The Jedi Master Ki-Adi-Mundi speaks first in response to Qui-Gon's declaration. "Impossible, the Sith have been extinct for a millennium." Mace Windu interjects, drawing out his eye. "I do not believe the Sith could have returned without us knowing," said with confidence. "Ah. Hard to see the dark side is." Grandmaster Yoda says. "We will use all of our resources to unravel this mystery. We will discover the identity of your attacker." Mace Windu continues. "May the Force be with you." With those finishing words meant as a way for the man to shoo the two Jedi away, Kagan and Obi-Wan leave, but not before giving the council the obligatory bow. As Obi-Wan begins to walk away, Kagan stays behind because he has more to say. "Mater Kagan. More to say, have you?" Yoda asks the Kagan with curiosity. "With your permission, my master. I have encountered a vergence in the Force." "A vergence, you say?" Yoda seems interested, because it had been not too long ago there were 2 such occurrences that had piqued their interest but were never able to locate it. Mace Windu also gains an intense look in his eyes because he was the one sent to investigate both cases only to turn up with nothing. "Located around a person? A boy. The cells of the highest concentration of midi-chlorians I have ever seen in a life form. It was possible he was conceived by the midi-chlorians." As Kagan says his bold statement, the Jedi Masters within the room look around to each other to see their fellow members' expressions. Most still have a composed and stoic face, but their body language gives away their disbelief. Windu decided to ask the about what he thinks Kagan is referring to. "You refer to the prophecy of the one who will bring balance to the Force. You believe it is this boy?" Windu has this look about him when asking about Qui-Gon's statement. "I don't presume to dash," Kagan says before being cut off by Yoda. "But you do. Revealed your opinion is." "I request the boy be tested, master." Kagan asks. "Oh, trained as a Jedi, you request for him, Yoda says. "Finding him was the will of the Force. I have no doubt of that." Kagan says confidently whilst the masters yet again look around to each other before Yoda looks towards Windu signaling something. Windu sighs before speaking in a lazy tone. "Bring him before us then." Done with what he had come there to do, Kagan now begins to leave the room with Obi-Wan rejoining right beside him. At dusk, standing before the Jedi High Council, Anakin is talking out loud while being watched intensely by those surrounding him. Got to love the very disconcerting stares I am getting. It wouldn't make an ordinary child feel uncomfortable at all. Anakin thinks to himself. The Jedi are currently testing Anakin's abilities related to the Force. The task is quite easy. My extrasensory perception has only gotten stronger over the years. It is not that hard to identify what is on an electronic device, especially since my specialty is technology and mind-based Force abilities. Windu holds a device and Anakin has to guess what the device is displaying. A ship. The device switches every so often to see how well a person's ability to perceive the unseen. A cup. Windu is staring at the boy intensely even more so than the original, considering he doesn't even look like a 9-year-old kid. A ship. Anakin's voice says again. A speeder. And again. Windu lowers the device before looking towards Yoda as Yoda does the same. Contemplative Yoda stares at Anakin with an intense look. Man training the mind certainly does help me control the feelings I am having right now. What I am unsure of is how they are going to react to being unable to feel any emotion from me. Humming to himself, Yoda directs his gaze towards Anakin whilst saying, "How feel you?" Anakin responds, "I feel fine." Anakin's thoughts. The general way to say you are not fine, but I am only really feeling fine right now. Maybe a little nervous, but for different reasons than what the masters here may think. Anakin decides to start creating some minor feelings around himself that he and others would associate with worry or concern and nervousness. I think I should reverse card my emotion sensing ability to help project some fake emotions. As if picking up on the emotions, Anakin decides to let out. Yoda continues. "Afraid, are you?" "No, sir." Instead of Yoda saying they could see through him, Yoda decides to approach from another angle and outright says some of his suspicions. "Are you trying to hide your feelings?" Anakin, surprised, but it does not show on his face, thinks. I should have given the Jedi Masters here some more credit, at least Yoda. He does have experience after all, if not in the techniques that I have created, but in many other things. Deciding to be truthful in this situation, as lying would only increase their suspicions, Anakin says. "Yes, I am a bit uncomfortable with the Jedi Masters here evaluating me so intensely. I also am thinking of other things, and I know that those who are Force sensitive are capable of reading the emotions and thoughts of others, whose minds remains open for all to see." Anakin continues. "Others, you are afraid of seeing what you think, I think." Yoda says. "I do not deny your claim. I wish to pose a question. What has my fears of complete strangers have to do with anything?" Anakin replies whilst thinking. "I don't really fear these people. More like have caution because of the way the Jedi are and how they act. I am inclined to believe that shielding myself is a much better option. I have felt the presences of all of these Force sensitivity people within the room unintentionally probe me. Everything." Yoda exclaims with some somber passion. "Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering." Anakin looks towards Windu to see him stare at himself with a contemplative look. "Sense much not from you. I question your control. Tell us, your real emotions, young empath." Yoda continues. "Well, at least they didn't outright reject me like they had to the original. That is one step in the right direction. I do hate I have to restrain my presence within the Force though, knowing full well the reaction they would have. I leak some dark side energies and they most certainly would interrogate me about that as well." Deciding to lie about his answer, Anakin says. "I have always been able to do so. Even from when I was young, I could hide myself away from others, or sense to a greater extent another's thoughts and predict their actions." Yoda hums to himself again as Windu continues. "Interesting. Boy, can you tell us why you have also grown so fast compared to others of your species? Do you have any ideas?" Anakin replies, lying through his teeth. "Not that I know of, no." Night cycle. Coruscant. Within the Council's conference room, the Jedi Masters can all be seen yet again surrounding Anakin, but this time he is not alone and is accompanied by Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Ki-Adi-Mundi speaks first, acknowledging Anakin's capabilities. "The Force is strong with him." "He is to be trained then?" Qui-Gon questions. Windu with no hesitation answers the question in a laid-back manner. "No. He will not be trained." "No?" Qui-Gon asks in a strange tone. "Their reasoning?" "He is too old." Windu explained why with a not-so-simple answer, because it was obviously much more than just his age taken into account. "He is the chosen one." Qui-Gon replies. His voice resounded with a sure tone. "Thanks for the vote of confidence, buddy. If I didn't want to save you before, I would want to save you now." Anakin thinks to himself. Obviously that is the very same reason, but I think it is much more than just age. It also probably doesn't help I actually look and have matured faster than what my actual age should be. "Sense much not from you. I question your control." Tell us, your real emotions, young empath. Yoda continues. Well, at least they didn't outright reject me like they had to the original. That is one step in the right direction. I do hate I have to restrain my presence within the Force though, knowing full well the reaction they would have. I leak some dark side energies and they most certainly would interrogate me about that as well. Deciding to lie about his answer, Anakin says. I have always been able to do so. Even from when I was young, I could hide myself away from others, or sense to a greater extent another's thoughts and predict their actions. Yoda hums to himself again as Windu continues. Interesting. Boy, can you tell us why you have also grown so fast compared to others of your species? Do you have any ideas? Anakin replies, lying through his teeth. Not that I know of, no. Night cycle. Coruscant. Within the Council's conference room, the Jedi Masters can all be seen yet again surrounding Anakin, but this time he is not alone and is accompanied by Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Ki-Adi-Mundi speaks first, acknowledging Anakin's capabilities. The Force is strong with him. He is to be trained then? Qui-Gon questions. Windu with no hesitation answers the question in a laid-back manner. No. He will not be trained. No? Qui-Gon asks in a strange tone. Their reasoning? He is too old. Windu explained why with a not-so-simple answer, because it was obviously much more than just his age taken into account. He is the chosen one. Qui-Gon replies. His voice resounded with a sure tone. Thanks for the vote of confidence, buddy. If I didn't want to save you before, I would want to save you now. Anakin thinks to himself. Obviously that is the very same reason, but I think it is much more than just age. It also probably doesn't help I actually look and have matured faster than what my actual age should be. I can't say I was surprised by their decision. It would be too much of a risk to have me enter the Jedi because they can't fully indoctrinate me, separate me from familial love, the list goes on, and beat down my sense of individualism. There are obviously more reason. Just like the original, they feared my power could be turned on them. I don't intend to go against them anyway. I am just here to get what I want, meet a few people and make connections. Then I am a bounce. You must see that. Qui-Gon continues. Humming while also delving into the Force once again, Yoda tries to see the general direction of Anakin's future, but he sees nothing. It is undecided, or the Force itself cannot give a direction the boy would walk on. Clouded this boy's future is. Yoda says. Qui-Gon, frustrated with the Council, states. I will train him then. Obi-Wan looks at his master when he said that. I will take Anakin as my Padawan learner. Qui-Gon says, looking proud in his decision. An apprentice you have, Qui-Gon. Impossible to take on a second. Yoda states at Qui-Gon's sudden decision. The code forbids it. Windu interjects. Obi-Wan is ready. Qui-Gon says, having confidence in his apprentice. Obi-Wan quick to step up and prove himself. I am ready to face the trials. Our own council on who we will keep on who is ready. Yoda says to the eager Obi-Wan. He is headstrong and he has much to learn of the living Force, but he is capable. There is little more he can learn from me. Qui-Gon states. Yoda decides to put off the topic until a later date. Young Skywalker's fate will be decided later. Now is not the time for this. The Senate is voting for a new Supreme Chancellor, and Queen Amidala is returning home, which would put pressure on the Federation and could widen the confrontation. Windu redirects the conversation. And draw out the Queen's attacker. Ki-Adi-Mundi adds to the new topic of conversation. Go with the Queen to Naboo and discover the identity of this dark warrior. This is the clue we need to unravel the mystery of the Sith. Windu finishes off with his own thoughts coming through. He has after all gone on a wild goose chase across the galaxy not once, but 2 times because of some vergence they had all felt. He had been annoyed, but that was just his duties as a Jedi to discover and locate if there are any problems that would arise and destabilize the peace. May the Force be with you. Yoda says in a tone that is final. The 3 standing at the center then leave the room heading elsewhere. Meeting back on the platform where they had parked the Nubian ship, Jedi Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are there to meet back up with the Queen and go with her back to Naboo. It is not disrespect, Master. It's the truth. Obi-Wan is currently debating about Anakin with Qui-Gon. From your point of view, Qui-Gon shuts down Obi-Wan's argument. The boy is dangerous. They all sense it. Why can't you? Obi-Wan says. His fate is uncertain. He is not dangerous. The Council will decide Anakin's future, and that should be enough for you. Now get on board. Qui-Gon says in a final tone. Anakin just so happens to overhear them, but waits until Qui-Gon approaches him. Jedi Qui-Gon, I thank you for your help getting me here and the things you have done for me. Like standing up for me against what I could only assume are your superiors. I don't want to cause you any more trouble than I already have. Anakin finishes. Ani, you aren't trouble and have not caused trouble yourself. At least not directly. Kagan continues. I am not allowed to train you, so for now you will have to be mindful and watch me. Always remember, your focus determines your reality. Those are some wise words. Thankfully, I have already sort of been living that way. It isn't totally useless advice though. Anakin thinks. Stay close to me, and you will be safe. Kagan finishes, but Anakin decides to get a clarification about midichlorians from a Jedi, because even though he has collected all the information he could, it is nearly always better to get it directly from a source. Sir, I heard Yoda talking about midichlorians, and I have become curious about what they are? Heading straight to the point, Anakin asks. Midichlorians are a microscopic life form that resides within all living cells. Kagan then continues, seeing Anakin has nothing to add. And we are symbionts with them. Life forms living together for mutual advantage. Without the midichlorians, life would not exist and there would be no knowledge of the Force. They continually speak to us, telling us the will of the Force. When you learn to quiet your mind, wait, you already have a natural predisposition to that. Well, when you do a little bit of training, I am sure you would hear them speaking to you. Kagan finishes before turning around to await the Queen. Bowing, Kagan says, Your Majesty, it is my pleasure to continue to serve and protect you. I welcome your help. Senator Palpatine fears that the Federation will destroy me. The Queen says, I assure you I will not allow that to happen. Kagan responds. The last aboard the ship was Anakin, finishing with some last thoughts. I'll be back. Chapter 23. V.1, C.23 Duel of the Fates. She is more foolish than I thought. The holographic figure of Sith Lord Sidious states as he communicates with his pawns. We are sending all troops to meet this army assembling near the swamp. It appears to be made up of primitives. The Viceroy reports. This will work to our advantage. Darth Sidious says. I have your approval to proceed then, my lord? Wipe them out. The Sith Lord pauses for dramatic effect. All of them. Naboo. Sneaking their way through the area and split off into different directions. Padme, Kagan, Obi-Wan and Anakin all stay hidden just behind some cover. Padme signals to Panika that they are in position. Kagan turns to Anakin and starts to speak to him. Once we get inside, I want you to find a safe place to hide and stay there. Anakin doesn't reply and only nods. Well, I plan to get on a ship and get some of the action. I don't plan to sit around and do nothing, let alone how the original did. The closer I get to the flagship, which controls the droids, the faster I will be able to take control. I have already made progress, and I am close to finishing. All I need to do is to speed up the progress, and that would require going towards the control ship. Anakin thinks. The ambush is set and the groups, both Padme's and Panika's, is ready. Aimed and ready to go, they fire, blowing up one of the tank-like vehicles parked outside the palace by using their own specialized vehicle procured from the Naboo resistance. This draws the attention of the droids guarding the area, and it draws them in. Captain Panika loops back around and meets up just behind Padme, Kagan, Obi-Wan and Anakin, following them inside. The distraction doesn't fully work as some droids also spot the group trying to enter the palace and start blasting. Kagan and Obi-Wan activate their lightsabers, deflecting the shots fired in their direction, while taking care of the few droids left standing guard outside the palace entrance. The group is successful and make it inside without the rest of the droids noticing them. A few other volunteer guardsmen enter alongside the group. The supposed droids that the Gungan army was to face was not there, and a lot of the reinforcements for the Viceroy to rely on. All thanks to my doing. No lives lost simply because I was well prepared to handle the situation. Within the droid control ship, all units had been recalled, or at least all units directly connected to the vessel was recalled. Mostly the ones that were inactivated, thus saving many lives. The night before Anakin had left with the group back on Tatooine, he had some ideas on delaying Maul by taking his ship while distracted. This would possibly delay Maul just enough so Kagan and Maul do not get into a fight, as he was his ticket into the Jedi. Without Qui-Gon's insistence that he must be trained as a Jedi, he would not have the chance to be allowed to enter. The group has made their way back inside conveniently, where many ships are docked and are fully resupplied with necessary repairs and full fuel tanks. Kagan, Obi-Wan and Padme are the first to make an entrance, and the two Jedi protect Padme from the blaster shots from the droids within the bay. Padme along with the guardsmen have their own blaster weapons, using it against the droids. Ani, go find cover. Kagan tells Anakin. Quick. Well, I guess this is where the fun begins. Anakin thinks to himself, moving to the side whilst easily dodging the blaster shots. Which ship will I commandeer for myself? The guardsmen that had come along were actually pilots, as Padme exclaims to them. Get to your ships. Everyone spreads out and heads further into the hangar bay. Deciding to do a little more than just sit behind some cover before whisking himself away in a ship, Anakin uses telekinesis subtly to guide one of the fallen droid's blasters in his direction. The pilots hop into their ships as they are being fired at. I think I should save a few lives. Anakin now has the blaster, and with precision aiming is able to take care of a few of the droids that would have managed to take a life. I do dislike unnecessary death. Anakin thinks to himself while getting in a position close to one of the ships. R2-D2 hops into one of the ships while communicating to Anakin to hop in. I did manage to learn what an astromech is saying. Through Mechadaru, I was able to pick up a few things in terms of the language of droids. I am sorry to one of those pilots, but I am going to have to commandeer your ship. The original Anakin would get on the ship because it was safe, but also because the pilot that was meant to get on had been killed. This time the pilot might have been saved, but that doesn't mean he would stop his plan. More and more of the pilots are able to get into their ships and then fly from the outside of the hangar bay. They are going towards the starship fleet orbiting the planet. I do not have to go on an epic flight and put my life on the line to save everyone. Preparedness is key to survival. All the pilots getting into their ships do not know about the current situation with Anakin taking control of the droid control ship, and they all believe that it is their mission to destroy it. Near all of the droids had been recalled back to the flagship while Anakin was in control. In fact, the flagship is just about prepared to leave the Naboo system and travel all the way to Dathomir for a reconstruction and connection establishment of his droid army. I thought that me stealing his ship would delay Maul from getting here, but I guess I should have expected he would have options in an event he is stranded. Anakin sensed Maul was close, and that what he had done had probably empowered Maul's abilities. I have just made him more angry, great. Well, now it is time for the grand entrance that would introduce Maul fully. Everyone walks to one of the doors, and just as everyone is about to get there, it opens revealing the Sith apprentice, Darth Maul. Maul has his head bowed, but he slowly raises his head showing his corrupted burning yellow eyes. An indication of dark side allegiance. I can hear the music now. Duel of the Fates. Anakin decides to use his Force technique now to hide his presence within the Force while everyone is distracted, and takes control of the ship through Mechadaru. I can handle splitting my consciousness in two directions. At least for now. Any more than this it would be a pain and start to cause minor headaches. I will focus entirely while keeping a small part of my consciousness here to make sure and alert me when I am needed. Anakin hops off the ship without making a sound and stays clear out of sight. Everyone is too scared to approach any further. We will handle this. Kagan steps forward indicating to everyone the problem in front of them is something they would be unable to handle. We will take the long way. Padme decides in a split second with everyone else but Kagan, Obi-Wan and Anakin following her. I will try to manipulate events so Maul doesn't die. I wouldn't want my ally to complain to me about the death of her favorite son. Not that she would know it was me who had caused the death. It is best she is kept in her sane mind for as long as I can. Maul drops his dark hood, exposing more of his Zobric features. That's right, there are also droidekas. Droidekas come from behind and roll into the scene and start to impede Padme and the rest. Maul ignites his double-sided saber revealing the bleeding red color of its light. Kagan and Obi-Wan also ignite their sabers in response. They engage in combat finally, starting with the intense use of their lightsabers. It does really show just how powerful Maul is, or at least shows the results of his training that he is able to combat two Jedi at the same time. I know in general the dark side provide more oomph, but that doesn't mean the light side of the Force is anything to scoff at either. Deciding to act before any lives could be taken, Anakin starts and manipulates the ship in the direction of the droidekas. Destroying the droidekas, now Anakin is free to put most of his attention on the fight between the three Force sensitives. The ship will be fine by itself, at least for now. I have made a rudimentary artificial intelligence program for the ship, so it can do the basic things while I can control the more finer parts, freeing up my attention from having to help destroy the flagship. Let's go! Padme exclaims as they start to exit the hangar and go into the area they want. The intense duel is still ongoing as the fight for their lives, both of the Jedi and the Sith apprentice. Maul leads the two into another area. I just have to focus and concentrate. As long as Kagan is not outright killed and Maul is also not killed, I would have achieved my goal. Obi-Wan is pushed away with a Force-enhanced kick by Maul to create some room for himself. Kagan engages with the apprentice. Their goal is not to kill Maul but capture him to interrogate him, as it was requested by the Jedi Council to find out about this attacker. It is harder to incapacitate than kill after all. I do have experience myself. Obi-Wan rejoins the fight as Anakin quietly follows behind the three. Entering another room that has a large drop, the three continue to engage in this long duel that would decide the fate of those in the room. The lightsaber duel between the Force-sensitive individuals is still going on, and at this point it is slowly turning into a battle of attrition. Their hidden watcher keeps a close eye on their battle, mentally recording their patterns, forms, movements, and everything else he could make to his advantage. Telepathic abilities. At least my version of telepathy sure is great. Anakin thoughts on his mental capabilities. The lighting is intense though, and it doesn't help they have chosen to fight in this area in particular. As a precaution, I will just use Mecha Daru to control those laser doors that turn on and off. Maul gives Obi-Wan a well-placed kick, forcing him off of the ledge but landing and hanging on to another ledge of the platform pathways below. Kagan overpowers Maul and hits Maul off of the edge as well, but Maul has an easier time landing with risk of falling off another edge. Kagan follows him down, which leaves him exposed, allowing Maul to kick Kagan away before he could do anything else. The two then continue with Maul on the defensive and Kagan aggressively pursuing. The two exchange blows of their lightsabers as they toe the line of being able to be pushed down at any second. Obi-Wan finally gets up and tries to follow after the two but has lost some ground, so he will have to catch up. Here it is. The fate of Kagan will be decided. Anakin, delving deep into the Force, starts to send out small ripples, beginning to concentrate on the moment that is to come. Kagan and Maul enter the laser doors, but before they could continue are cut off from each other. The calm before the storm. Kagan sits down for a rest as he waits while Maul walks back and forth impatiently. With the Gungans they had not experienced any attack, so they did not have to provide a distraction anymore. The Viceroy is practically near defenseless. He still has access to some droids that were not directly controlled by the droid control ship, but that was only able to protect him for a little bit as he had been swiftly captured by Padme and her group that went after him. Maul continuously paces back and forth with impatience, and a cold look on his face, staring directly at his prey, Kagan. Kagan, as if at peace with his surroundings, has his eyes closed, distancing himself to keep his head clear for the following fight, but is also trying to rest his body, if only for a minute. On instinct, Kagan jumps up and re-engages Maul in combat within the final layer. The final room. Obi-Wan rushes in from behind, trying to make it in time to help and reinforce his master. Going around the room, Maul and Kagan continue to exchange blows at a quick pace, keeping themselves steady so as to not lose balance and fall off of the ledge into the hole. The laser doors close once again, leaving Obi-Wan behind. Going back and forth, the two continuously beat on each other, trying to gain the upper hand. But Maul could tell that Kagan was starting to lose his energy. This leaves Kagan to go on the defensive. The moment is coming. Silently, Anakin has built up to this moment, and within the Force it is resounding to his call. Maul pushes Kagan back, now going on the offensive, aggressively attacking Kagan with that much hate, anger, and whatever other emotion Maul has pent up to draw from. Obi-Wan can only watch on in concern as he too can tell his master is losing, and it would not be long before he makes a mistake. A silence has built up within the Force, and the only thing that could be heard was the clash of sabers between Kagan and Maul. Something is different though. The two stare each other down, knowing full well that this moment would decide who wins and who dies. They continue to clash, up, down, left, right, in all directions as both try to outmaneuver each other, both looking for openings. Kagan messes up, he goes for an overarching swing, but does not have the power or energy to swiftly evade the next attack. A change, a reckoning, a shift. Maul, seeing an opening, disorients Kagan by hitting his face. The next moment would have originally had Kagan be stabbed by Maul's saber through his abdomen. Maul goes in for the kill, but just as he is about to pierce the stunned Jedi, a storm is felt through the Force, and negates Maul's saber just long enough for Kagan to regain his bearings. What was that? Kagan doesn't think too deeply about the occurrence, and retreats a bit so he can reassess his situation. I shall preserve my energy for now, and await for Obi-Wan. Then we can finish him together. Maul's thoughts, on the other hand, were not so pleasant, as this angers him even further, knowing he had been interrupted by someone or something. He may not get the chance to kill the Jedi again. Obi-Wan outside is relieved that nothing bad had happened, and also does not think too deeply about it, and buries his curiosity for another time. Chapter 24. V.1, C.24 Duel of the Fates 2. Kagan and Maul are still going at it, but it is clearly seen that Kagan is still tired, even if he had gotten a reprise from whatever miraculous event that had happened. Obi-Wan is still waiting behind the laser screen door, as the two are both getting tired at the continuous battle at this point. If Maul is not careful, this could be the end of him. Luckily, he has someone ready to save him from certain death, just as Kagan had been, but this time it would have to be more subtle. All I need to do is push him down the shaft and make sure he doesn't die. Maul and his mother, Tolzin, can do the rest after that. Anakin waits patiently for the next set of events to take place, but now instead of relying on his foreknowledge, he has to rely heavily on his precognitive abilities. The doors deactivate and Obi-Wan jumps into action, nearly catching Maul off guard, but he manages to re-establish his positioning. Now being attacked from both sides, Maul has to find a way out of this situation, and obviously he will attack the current weakest link, that being Kagan. Turning around and pushing Obi-Wan a bit to put some distance between the two of them, Maul ruthlessly attacks Qui-Gon with everything he has. Qui-Gon defensively evades and blocks, trying to further conserve his energy, but not so much that it would cost him. Unfortunately, Maul's attempts are successful and he manages to harm Qui-Gon. With a kick he makes Qui-Gon go out of breath and slashes towards his hand holding his lightsaber. Arg! Qui-Gon makes a subdued sound of pain as his hand had now just been chopped off, making him currently unable to defend himself. Just as Maul is about to go in for the kill, Obi-Wan jumps over to stop Maul's attack. Qui-Gon, now with one remaining hand, uses telekinesis to get his saber towards his other free hand, while Obi-Wan keeps Maul distracted. I am sorry, but I can't block you from all harm. I guess you will take my place, or more like the original's place in being handless for a while. Anakin thinks morosely. Obi-Wan and Maul continue their back and forth before Obi-Wan manages to break away half of Maul's double-sided lightsaber. Now with only one saber available to him, Maul must change up his saber combat. Qui-Gon is quietly regathering himself and trying to ease the pain he is currently feeling due to the saber burns. At least it is not bleeding. Qui-Gon takes the situation in an upbeat manner. Maul is kicked and drops to the ground as Obi-Wan continues to pursue him, but Maul gets up in time to fend off Obi-Wan. With one saber, Maul is granted a greater capacity to move, but he is not as familiar in the use of one saber as he is in what he has trained with. Maul kicks Obi-Wan, where Obi-Wan does a backflip and lands himself back on the ground, barely dodging the swing from Maul. Maul, taking his opportunity granted to him, pushes Obi-Wan backwards, where he is nearly gone off of the edge. Qui-Gon cannot do anything in this moment as he is trying to rein in the pain. Obi-Wan loses his lightsaber and drops down off the ledge, but is hanging by a small bump integrated into the walls. Events are going the way I want it to, even without my influence, Anakin observes. Maul decides to rather rashly deal with Obi-Wan first, not taking into account Qui-Gon, who is steadily regaining his bearings. Maul kicks Obi-Wan's saber off of the edge, with him being unable to do anything about it. Back with Obi-Wan and the now passed out Qui-Gon due to his declining age and the intensity of the battle, Maul starts to play with his prey by using his saber to create sparks that fly into Obi-Wan's face. Obi-Wan, noticing his master that has fallen unconscious and that his saber is there to be used, starts to plan quickly within his head. Using the Force, Obi-Wan uses telekinesis to pull the saber towards him as he gets ready to explode into a jump. Obi-Wan then jumps up as the saber flies through the air right into his hand. He flips and lands behind Maul. Maul turns around to face his opponent, momentarily stunned with his guard let down, which will cost him dearly. Obi-Wan slices Maul's midsection near completely in half. Near completely because something pushed back, giving resistance to Obi-Wan's strike. Maul has a mixture of disbelief and pain appear on his face. As his expression clearly shows his surprise, he falls backwards into the long drop. His body near split in two. Maul falls down all the way as he hits himself several times against the metal walls and watches his other half of his body fall alongside him. Fortunately, he had not been fully cut in half and the damage could be repaired. That is, if he survives the fall. Obi-Wan, after taking care of the threat, rushes towards his master. Qui-Gon is unconscious, but because of the pain he lets out some ramblings in a delusional state of mind. Obi-Wan is obviously relieved that his master had not been killed and that he had just been injured instead. Unfortunately, his injury was to his main primary hand. A ship lands onto an open street of Naboo's capital of Theed. A delegation of resistance fighters, volunteer guards and policemen are lined up in wait of the ship. Padme, along with the rest of the crew, are facing the captured leader of the invasion, Viceroy Newt Gunray. Now, Viceroy, you are going to have to go back to the Senate and explain all this, Padme says as the ship behind them opens up its entrance ramp. Panika goes up to the two Neimoidians and continues with a line meant to release some of his anger. I think you can kiss your trade franchise goodbye. They are escorted onto the ship uncuffed. The rest of the group moves on to the side meeting with the visitors that had come to Naboo from out of the ship. Senator Palpatine, along with his own guards, come along and meets up his the now one-handed Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan and Anakin. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon bow, but Anakin uses his age to his advantage again, does not bow towards Palpatine. We are indebted to your bravery, Qui-Gon Jinn, and of course yours as well, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Palpatine says, then turns his head to the abnormally tall Anakin. And you, young Skywalker, we will watch your career with great interest. My career? Even if I did not have foreknowledge from my previous life, I would still be off-put by Palpatine. Palpatine moves past the two Jedi and Anakin over towards Padme with a brisk, light step to his jaunt. Congratulations on your election, Chancellor. Your boldness has saved our people, Your Majesty. It is you who should be congratulated. Together we should bring peace and prosperity to the Republic, Palpatine says with a smiling face. After the battle has been done, and over, Qui-Gon along with Obi-Wan are now within another part of the Naboo palace talking to the holographic figure, Yoda. Confer on you, level of Jedi Knight, the Council does. Yoda communicates to Obi-Wan as after the report had been given from Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Both of their accounts taken in. Obi-Wan has been evaluated and everyone within the Jedi High Council agreed to promote Obi-Wan solely based on his merits. Jedi Knight Qui-Gon Jinn, the Council disagrees. Your decision to take the boy as a Padawan learner. Yoda continues announcing the Anakin being allowed to join. If you wish to do so, I do not agree. Surely Master Yoda, you agree with my assessment that the boy is the chosen one. Qui-Gon insists his decision is the correct choice. The chosen one he may be. Nevertheless, grave danger I fear in his training. Yoda states his warning. Master Yoda, I will train Anakin. Without the approval of the Council if I must. Qui-Gon states. Jedi Knight Qui-Gon, your defiance is not needed. There is another solution, if I may offer. Yoda is proposing another solution towards how they would deal with Anakin. Agree with you, the Council will. Your new apprentice, Skywalker will be, but on one condition. Condition? What may that be? Qui-Gon asks. The Council and I sense greater potential. Young Skywalker has, but Skywalker is too old, and has emotions that could lead to the dark side. Yoda explains. Temper we must, Skywalker's abilities. Natural gifts. He has, and we think it would be prudent, that he be trained by more than one master. Yoda continues. 2 masters? You mean to say Anakin will not only have me as his master, but also another? Qui-Gon questions. Unorthodox, I admit, but the Council will not change this decision. Yoda says in response. Obi-Wan decides to ask the question on both his own and his master's mind. Master Yoda, who does the Council suggest to co-teach the boy? Humming to himself, Yoda answers the question. Mace Windu will be the boy's master as well. The reasoning behind this decision was because of characteristics that Anakin had shown. Windu would be the perfect master to pass down his form of lightsaber combat, which focuses in on the dark side and uses it to empower the user. Of course, a great amount of control is needed. The Jedi knows at least a little bit about Anakin's mental capabilities, allowing him greater control of his emotions, which is something the Jedi liked. Even more so would he be suited for Windu. Qui-Gon would still teach Anakin and have him as his student as well, just now he had to teach him other things. Another reason to make Anakin have 2 masters is to try and guide Anakin to become more ingrained into their order. Windu would be a good choice, so the Council had decided an exception could be made in this instance. No mass funeral to mourn the dead had taken place as practically no one had died. The invasion had so little losses that the Republic was stirring at the wake of the incident. Anakin was standing next to Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Qui-Gon had gotten a replacement hand, a mechanical one not too unlike the one the original Anakin and Luke Skywalker had to get when these two lost their hands. Thankfully the prosthetics of the era they are in are capable enough in giving people replacement limbs. It may not be as great as the original, but it was better than nothing. Qui-Gon would need some training of his own to get used to his new hand. Anakin decides to question Qui-Gon about what would happen to him if the Jedi had made their decision. So, what happens next? Specifically for me, am I allowed to join the Order? Obi-Wan speaks instead of Qui-Gon. Well, since I have been promoted myself, Qui-Gon can now take on a new apprentice of his own. Obi-Wan seems quite proud of his achievement. Yes, Obi-Wan is correct. You will now become my new apprentice. It is just you will have to have more than just myself as your master. Qui-Gon continues. Anakin says confused. More than just you? Anakin thinks at the same time. Is this how the Jedi work? I didn't know a Padawan could have multiple masters. I know there are multiple teachers and all that, but multiple masters. Yes, Jedi Master Mace Windu will also take on your training as his apprentice as well. Qui-Gon says. The Jedi had no reason to come to Naboo, as Qui-Gon had not died and they were having a discussion back on Coruscant over the mysterious warrior Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan had encountered. There is no doubt the mysterious warrior was a Sith. Windu speaks to Yoda. Yoda hums in agreement. Always 2 there are, no more, no less. Yoda takes a breath and then continues. A master and an apprentice. But which was destroyed? The master or the apprentice? Windu further questions. Dathomir. Grievous had finally gotten his first real mission. The expansion of the droid army would happen as he had reached through communication that his new leader had acquired a somewhat new but damaged droid control ship. Great for him as it would allow him greater control over the droids himself, to coordinate any plans of attacks or invasion, any defensive measures to be taken. Grievous was also aware of the allies his leader had here on Dathomir. known as the Night Sisters, and they were especially annoying, at least to him, pestering him every now and then, no doubt trying to get a rise out of him so they could benefit if he were to do anything negative against them. His leader would not like that, as he considers them important, at least for now. He could tell that Anakin was also getting fed up with the constant indirect methods in which they would antagonize him, so he would make a mistake. When questioned why they do this, Anakin answered, "The Dark Sisters here are heavily influenced by their culture and religion that has been built up over the course of time. This culture relies heavily on the dark side of the Force, which in on itself is not evil in nature." Anakin continued, "But it can influence them subconsciously, making them do things that act in accordance to their emotions, make them more manipulative, more driven to fulfill their goals, and to combine that with the dark side of the Force with their culture has made them be like that." Grievous, upon learning more about the Force and the powers one could wield, was interested if he too could do so. Anakin also answered it was a possibility that he was working on. Maybe he would gain their powers, but it wouldn't be to the same scale. Grievous believed his claims because of the evidence of his experiments were these living droids capable of using the very same powers, albeit limited in capacity, that Anakin and the Dark Sisters used. Grievous thought, if they could do it, why can't I? So that became one of his goals, to grow in strength, as he had also wanted to strike back at the Republic for stopping him in his tracks. Anakin had said the Republic was dying on its own, and it would be of no use fighting against them. But that did not mean Grievous would be out of action. Far from it. With the new droid control ship coming into their hands, they would be able to finally fully control Dathomir, no doubt in a co-rulership with the Dark Sisters just as promised. It would fully become their planet with basically no resistance. That would be able to cut off any and all communication, have the military might to fully control, and have a native natural people to this planet speak in favor of their occupation. Dathomir would become Anakin's new base of operations for his developing army, and Grievous would make sure his task and goals are completed. Chapter 25. V.1. C.25 Jedi Order I. Coruscant. A lot had happened to the Jedi as the invasion of Naboo continued, and after it had finished. Two key factors in particular were of the most importance. The incoming entrance of the supposed Chosen One from a prophecy only told to the Jedi, Anakin Skywalker joining their order, and one of the well-respected of the Jedi had left. Disappeared. This Jedi had. Dooku, who had left the Jedi Order, disappeared, nowhere to be found. Born into a noble family on the planet Sereno, he was the heir to vast wealth and the noble title of Count. Dooku was taken by the Jedi Order as a child and apprenticed to Thame Cerulean. As a Jedi Knight, he took Qui-Gon Jinn as his Padawan and later trained Komari Voza. Dooku was a respected instructor in the Jedi Temple and one of the most renowned swordsmen in the galaxy, surpassed only by Grandmaster Yoda and equal to Master Mace Windu. Dooku had been steadfast in his loyalty to the Order for the entirety of his long-lived life. He was 70 years of age after all, and had spent nearly 70 years as a Jedi, but a disastrous battle on Galadrin shook his faith in the Order and the Galactic Republic. He fell under the influence of Supreme Chancellor Palpatine of Naboo, and left the Jedi Order. After learning that Palpatine was secretly the Sith Lord Darth Sidious, Dooku turned to the dark side and became a Dark Lord of the Sith himself, replacing Darth Maul as Sidious's second apprentice. His new master bestowed upon him the Sith title of Darth Tyrannus. Only having recently left, Dooku had gone into consideration about his future and what he would do now he had joined Sidious. Reclaiming his birthright as Count of Sereno and his vast fortune, Dooku would conspire with Sidious to force the galaxy into a war that would bring the Sith to power. Even though I knew that the Senate was corrupt, the Council was fallible, and Jedi training methods far from perfect, I remained with the Jedi Order for 12 years after Galadrin. Dooku had once said. Why? Because I still believed that I could accomplish some good as a Jedi. I thought I could bring about some positive changes, right certain wrongs, and do better than maintain the status quo. In short, I was an utter fool. People had noticed, within the Order, that Dooku had been more withdrawn after the incident on Galadrin and the battle on Balteazer. He refused to accept any more missions from the Jedi Council and became concerned about prophecies he felt were coming true about dark times unfolding across the galaxy. While he discussed his concerns with many of the Order's most prominent Jedi Masters, Dooku's growing disenchantment with the Jedi way was sensed by Senator Palpatine, who had been watching Dooku for some time and had plans that required someone with Dooku's reputation, skills, and financial resources. Palpatine, even before the Battle of Naboo that had recently come to an end, had held several meetings with Dooku to feel out his opinions and cultivate him as an ally. Dooku's behavior and beliefs as a Jedi had previously been within the scope of Jedi orthodoxy. However, Dooku flirted with the belief that the dark side of the Force could be called upon without personal corruption as his discontent with the Jedi Order grew. Dooku had a close relationship with his own master, Master Yoda, along with his Padawans, and had heard of what Qui-Gon had suggested. The Sith were back. He had condemned the Republic Senate publicly, but not to the extent that it was so widely known because his Padawan learner he had ages ago had lost a hand. This upset him, but at least Qui-Gon Jinn was alive. Shortly thereafter, Dooku resigned from the Jedi Order, retired to Sereno, and claimed his family title of Count, left vacant by the death of his brother, while his nephew, Adon, and his sister-in-law went into self-exile on Alderaan. He neither gave a reason for his decision to leave the Jedi in his public announcement, nor did he provide one when summoned before the Jedi Council to explain his actions. Why would he? He had seen the corruption, and there was nothing stopping its spread. Nothing he could do as his words fell on deaf ears, and no eyes to see as the Jedi was blinded. Dooku's abrupt departure surprised and disturbed the Jedi Order. As a Jedi Master who had voluntarily resigned his commission, Dooku became part of the group later known as the Lost 20. In over 2,000 years, only 19 other Jedi Masters had walked away from the Order, and among those Dooku was considered the most bitter loss. The Jedi commissioned a bronzium bust of Dooku as it was created to join the other sculptures of the Lost 20 in the Jedi archives. Coruscant. Supreme Chancellor. Palpatine had been extremely happy, gleeful in fact that he had finally gotten one step closer to achieving his goals. Manipulating those fools in the Senate was easy. So very easy. And the Queen was oh so easy to manipulate as well. Sidious stews in his thoughts. Padme had been directed carefully by Sidious so he could become the Supreme Chancellor. He had orchestrated the Naboo blockade, but what he did not expect was for the Queen to be so bold. To be so against what he wanted. Even if he has what he needed. He had spent the last 6 months cultivating the Queen's trust, knowing she would heed him better than Ars Varuna would have. It was all for this moment, when, in a crisis, she had no other choice than to rely on him. Quite insidious, just as his Sith name would imply. He had also come across a new apprentice to make up for the one he had unfortunately lost. How very sad he was to lose someone so close to him. Not. Maul was a good apprentice for the time, but was lacking in what I wanted. What I needed, and his usefulness came to an end. His new apprentice, Darth Tyrannus, is quite the powerful Force user. He basically has little to do and train him with. He has all the basics already. What Sidious would need to do, however, is further corrupt his mind, as he remembers a conversation he had with the Count. I declined to be a member of the Council in order to devote myself to diplomacy, and look how that has turned out. The Republic is sliding deeper into chaos. Darth Tyrannus had told him. You're one man against a galaxy full of scoundrels. Sidious had replied with honeyed words. One man should be able to make a difference if he is powerful enough. Then Tyrannus said something that had piqued his interest, and Sidious had used to his full advantage to slowly turn Dooku away from the Jedi. It is unfortunate that he could already see some signs that Dooku is not an appropriate student for him. In fact, it was not himself that had discovered the potential in Darth Tyrannus. It was his very own previous master, Darth Plagueis. Sidious Master had once rambled on and on about his own failures due to the meddling of Darth Tyrannus. Plagueis envisioned and had wanted to create intersystem descent in the expansion region. Though Plagueis had no plans to replace Palpatine as his apprentice, Palpatine's reckless assassination of Senator Vidar Kim had brought to Plagueis' attention the possibility of Palpatine getting himself killed or exposed. As such, he viewed Dooku as a potential apprentice should Palpatine succumb to such a fate. This trait was something Sidious took on himself and further expanded upon it, by leaving behind his former apprentice Maul to the metaphorical wolves. Both Plagueis and Sidious had also toyed with the idea of indirectly turning Dooku to the dark side, and using him to create a schism within the Jedi Order. However, when Plagueis introduced him to Sidious, it was that relationship that would eventually become pivotal to the progression of the Sith's grand plan. Shortly after the victory of the Naboo and Gungans from the Trade Federation's invasion, Palpatine took Jedi Master Dooku to a diner in the works to discuss personal business over a meal. The two of them had been introduced by Ron Har Kim shortly after Palpatine had become a senator, and had formed a friendship based on Dooku's admiration of Palpatine's policies. To Dooku, it appeared as though Palpatine championed the underrepresented and underprivileged peoples of the Outer Rim, and in fact believed that Palpatine was largely responsible for the Outer Rim worlds receiving any representation in the Senate at all. Having previously agreed with Palpatine that the Republic had to be torn down before the galaxy could be saved, and immediately recognizing the political capital that the Naboo crisis had provided Palpatine, Dooku voiced his suspicion that Palpatine had been complicit in the invasion of his own homeworld. Dooku expressed his approval of Palpatine taking full political advantage of the situation, regardless of how it had come to be. When the topic of Dooku's impending resignation from the Jedi Order was broached by Palpatine, Dooku told his friend that he was now more resolved to leave than ever, but not for the reasons that Palpatine suspected. His interest had been raised, however, as he had come to discover a rather unique boy, Anakin Skywalker, For though he had taken little issue with the Jedi Council's decision to interfere in the Naboo crisis, he informed Palpatine that a young boy, Anakin Skywalker, had been brought by Kagan from Tatooine and was suspected of being the prophesied Jedi Chosen One. Palpatine was completely shocked at this revelation. He had personally encountered the boy in Amidala's retinue, and had even given him a spare bedroom to sleep in during Amidala's stay at his senatorial suite. Yet despite Anakin's one-of-a-kind potential in the Force, Palpatine had sensed nothing. While Palpatine's interest in Anakin was fairly academic for the time being, Plagueis nearly panicked when Palpatine informed him of Anakin's existence. Years before, Plagueis had attempted to coerce the Force via midi-chlorians to spontaneously create life, and he had ultimately failed to do so. More than that, however, Plagueis believed that not only had he failed, but that his actions had caused the Force to react in such a way as to counter the Sith's tampering with it. If the boy, who had been born at around the same time as Plagueis' failed experiment, was indeed the Chosen One, he could be the embodiment of the Force's opposition to the Sith. As such, while Palpatine did not particularly care that Anakin had come to the attention of the Jedi, Plagueis was adamantly opposed to the Jedi training him. He immediately ordered Palpatine to instruct Maul that killing Qui-Gon Jinn was now of paramount importance, as Jinn was essentially acting as Anakin's sponsor within the Jedi Order. Without Jinn backing the boy, Plagueis hoped the Jedi Council would simply send him back to Tatooine. Unfortunately, this did not come to pass, and would not have succeeded originally as well. Another thing to take of note was the death of his master. Sidious had been planning for a long time now already that Plagueis had to die, one way or another, for him to truly take the reins as the one and only true Sith Lord. The night before the election, Damask made his first public appearance in years, attending the premiere of an experimental Mon Calamari piece at the Galaxy's Opera House with Palpatine. After the performance and late dinner at the Manerai, the two Sith Lords retired to Damask's penthouse in the Kaldani Spires building to celebrate Palpatine's imminent triumph. There, Palpatine plied Plagueis with wine while rehearsing his Chancery acceptance speech slated to be delivered the following day before the Senate. Plagueis soon fell into an alcohol-induced sleep, and Palpatine saw his chance. With his master's guard completely down, Palpatine blasted Plagueis' transpirator mask with Force lightning, shorting it out and waking him. Being inebriated and half asleep, however, the Mune could do nothing to stop his apprentice. Palpatine took this opportunity to thoroughly deride, mock, and otherwise disparage Plagueis, telling him that for the whole of their relationship the apprentice had ever manipulated the master, playing him like a pawn. And throughout the relentless derision, Sidious sent forth additional blasts of lightning, causing the Mune immense pain as he slowly suffocated. Adding insult to injury, Sidious lambasted Plagueis for his role in Palpatine's own warped conversion, hatefully accusing him of manipulating a confused Boya into murdering his family. Strangely, but perhaps merely reflecting that early psycho-emotional conflict and trauma, Palpatine then expressed to the senior Sith his genuine gratitude for the teachings that Plagueis had, over the years of their association, passed on to him. At the moment that the stricken Mune finally succumbed to death, Sidious, having only just proclaimed himself the embodiment of the long-prophesied Sithari, felt a monumental shift in the Force, which he interpreted as the dark side anointing him as the tool it would use to take over the universe. The exultant Sith Lord, however, then felt another tremor, or vague awareness of a power greater than himself that was shading his sense of triumph. He suspected that it was perhaps Plagueis reaching out from death to vex him, or simply the aftershocks of his own rise. Sidious reasoned that neither was the case, though he would not discover what exactly the foreboding feeling was until later. Although I had accomplished a lot, there is still a lot to go before I can truly succeed in all my endeavors. Chapter 26. V.1, C.26 Jedi Order 2. Coruscant. The Code of the Jedi, and respectively by extension a part of every member, was passed on throughout the entirety of their existence. There is no emotion, there is peace. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. There is no passion, there is serenity. There is no chaos, there is harmony. There is no death, there is the Force. Or the code usually practiced by the younglings trained by the Jedi. Emotion, yet peace. Ignorance, yet knowledge. Passion, yet serenity. Chaos, yet harmony. Death, yet the Force. Strangely enough, this code above is a much better alternative version of the Jedi's code, but the one mainly used is not this one. This code was usually recited by Jedi younglings during their initiate trials. It is quite unfortunate that it is not used more often, as I consider it a much more complete version of the Jedi code, or at least it is better than the one currently used. Anakin thinks as he is being transported back to Coruscant along with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Qui-Gon had requested a transport back to Coruscant to Padme as they were ready to leave. With everything that had been accomplished, it was time for Anakin's training to begin. Anakin, as you know, you are to have two masters to teach you instead of one. Considering this, a plan was devised so as to make sure you have time to train under each of us, myself and then Master Windu. Kagan says, walking towards Anakin, who is currently within his own thoughts. Yes, Master. Are you to tell me my training schedule, or has that not been decided yet? Anakin said in a questioning tone. Anakin had to change his way of addressing Kagan, as he did accept him as his new master. He would be, hopefully, learning a lot from Kagan, as he was trained by the infamous duelist expert Dooku, who was in turn trained by Yoda. Kagan replies. The details are still yet to be worked out between myself and Master Windu, but I am sure we can come to a swift conclusion. Is your hand all right? Do you like your replacement? Anakin gestures towards Qui-Gon's now mechanical hand. Well, yes. Before I forget, I would like to thank you for your ability to make me a new hand. It feels quite good where I have no discomfort at all. Kagan says whilst smiling. I am glad to be of help. Anakin then thinks. I did this as a sorry for not being able to fully save you from the encounter with Maul. But hey, it must be better than nothing at all. I did especially craft that new hand for you. I see you are quite skilled in the areas concerning technology. In fact, all I have seen from you were your various talents in many areas. I wonder what else you could tell me about your abilities. Kagan questions, trying to see what else Anakin is capable of. Well, for the longest time I could sense I have some innate connection to the mind, my mind in particular. I have great control over my memories, my thoughts and emotions. I can also sense the emotions and thoughts of others quite easily as well. It has been quite useful to me. Anakin continues. Yes. I have been informed of this rather special ability you have been born with. Most who are Force sensitive have some type of talent in regards to the Force and other things. Kagan explains. Yours could very well be Force abilities related to the mind. Kagan states. It is not just my mind. I also have great control of and understanding of technology. As I am sure you have noticed. Anakin leaves out. I also have a special talent related to anything to the body, particularly reinforced by the dark magics working on me, but I don't think I want to inform anyone of this. At least for now. Yes, your affinity for technology is certainly interesting, but I am unsure as to what Force abilities there are to that. Kagan continues. Enough of that. I think you will need to come to terms with and focus on the basics of your training. First, I think I will start with a lesson in history and basics of the Jedi way. The training of students of the Jedi Order changed and evolved over its many millennia of existence. Throughout its history, though, the idea of a master and an apprentice was consistent, though at times more than one apprentice could be taken by a single master. Training was harsh and difficult, consisting of nearly 2 decades of tutelage before an apprentice became a full-fledged knight. That is why Anakin's case was pretty unique, as a student usually would have no more than one master, but the current Jedi had to take into account the potential of Anakin and future of him, even if they don't all fully believe to be the chosen one. At least not yet, as they have yet to know the full capabilities and talents of the boy other than the preliminary test done when he was on Coruscant. Following the end supposed extinction of the Sith and the passage of the Ruzan Reformation, the Jedi Order completely reformed its academy under the leadership of Grand Master Fei Coven and the Council of First Knowledge, closing many of the ancient praxioms of the early order in favor of a more centralized academy on Coruscant. Those that remained open were overseen by a council of masters as opposed to a single administrator. The formation of the Acquisition Division was a necessity with the newly implemented age restriction. All initiates in the order were restricted to infants and very young children. In order to help, the Galactic Republic passed a law requiring all member worlds to check for Force sensitivity upon delivering each child. The Council also took the time to codify a formal battery of 5 tests of knighthood, in addition to restricting apprenticeship to 1 master and 1 apprentice. As the academy flourished, so did the order. Initiates were placed in clans and learned together for over a decade along a strict, structured regimen of academics and combat. The Jedi Academy on Coruscant structured an Initiate's Day, and the lessons progressed in difficulty as a student moved through the academy system. Lessons were taught by Jedi Masters and unranked Jedi from the Education Corps, and designed to give the Initiates the skills they would need in the field. What Kagan was going to teach Anakin, at least what he could officially teach him now that he could not back on Naboo, was the basics of the basics when it comes to their training. He is an intelligent boy. In fact, he may very well be a genius, so it shouldn't be too hard for him to advance quickly, Kagan thought. The Jedi Order and by extension the Jedi take on very strict vows, Anakin. These vows or mantras and chants are words the Jedi live by. Of course I disagree a lot of the time with how it is done, but that is just the way things are. Jedi and their code. Their need and desire reinforced through indoctrination to follow the code is partially why they had become complacent in their seats of power. Even if there are lessons to be learnt, their inability to evolve for the better cripples them and cripples those around them. At the forefront being the Galactic Republic that had become corrupt, but many who are in the know would say it was the fault of the Jedi. No, the Jedi only enabled those with less than clean backgrounds to prosper. In on itself, the Republic was failing, but that didn't mean some intervention could have saved it. Through some in-depth analysis on the Jedi Code and the way they follow it, Anakin had come up with why they follow it and how. When it came to the dark side, or more specifically anything to do with negative emotions which were completely natural to most living sentient creatures above a certain sapience level would have, the Jedi would shun it. Jedi were taught to accept the inherent dark side within themselves and conquer it, and not let it conquer them. Fear of loss, anger, hate, jealousy, greed, and aggression, all of the dark side had to be stripped from its influence over a Jedi through patience and training. Even when it came to emotions such as love, it was enforced that no such feelings be present. While the Jedi Code forbade possession and attachments, the Jedi were encouraged and trained to love in terms of compassion. Attachment was the inability to accept change as the fundamental characteristic of life, to accept death as the natural part of life, the inability to let go. Feeding into fear of loss and greed, leading to jealousy, attachment was selfish, a shadow of greed and thus a path of the dark side of the Force. Therefore, attachment was forbidden for a Jedi, who had to train themselves to let go of everything they were afraid to lose, to renounce all attachments. Thus, they could be compassionate and loving and caring, but not be possessive and grabbing and holding on to things, trying to keep them frozen in time, accepting the transitional nature of life. This allowed them to love the totality of life unconditionally without selectively choosing individual life forms to become selfishly attached to. At one point Qui-Gon had been told something ridiculous, which he held back from telling Anakin, but Qui-Gon projected his thoughts as such from that memory that Anakin could perceive it clear as day. Falling in love, that's what the Jedi Code forbids. Getting laid? Not so much. Not if it's casual, like me and Selby. Rael Averross defends casual sexual relationships to Qui-Gon Jinn. And it is true that the Jedi do not like romantic relationships of any kind, strictly forbidding it. What most Jedi seem to not understand is that sexual relations are not forbidden as long as romantic feelings do not develop. Members of the Jedi Order considered each other their family, and sometimes were truly related by blood. Jedi Masters developed strong, trusting and loving bonds with their apprentices whom they raised, being like a parent to them. However, they were not supposed to form attachment. For the greater good, they had to be able to let go of them, to not to lose 1,000 lives just to save one. The Jedi considered romantic feelings natural and as such, they did not prohibit them. But for a Jedi Knight it was essential to make the right choice for the Order and not neglect their Jedi duties in the favor of their beloved, even if that would mean the end of the relationship. Jedi Knight Rael Averross believed that the Jedi Code permitted casual sexual relationships as long as the Jedi did not form attachments. Averross had such a relationship with Selby, an innkeeper on Pijal, when he served as Lord Regent of that planet. The Jedi were encouraged to rely on their instincts over their mind, which is truly weird considering a lot of a being's instincts are tied to a lot of emotions. An example being fear, where fear can help a person decide and react to something that is dangerous, hazardous, or can cause harm. Evolutionary reasons are behind things like this. They held their emotions valuable but were also warned to be mindful of them, for they could cloud their judgment. A Jedi had to maintain a serene, quiet mind in order to stand on the light side instead of the dark. Thus they were able to keep the Force within them in balance. The Jedi knew that the universe is far from static, and the way of the Force is that all living eventually must die. They had a strong faith in the Force and found comfort in knowing that upon dying, they, just like all things that ever lived, will be transformed into the cosmic Force, the wellspring from which the living Force emanated, becoming one with it. Therefore they saw death as the natural part of life. Despite they were saddened by it, they were advised to remember, one day they will all pass on, and rejoice and celebrate those around them who passed away and become one with the Force, instead of grieving and missing them. The fear of losing the living to inevitable death was attachment, the shadow of greed. While it is certainly true, Anakin couldn't help but also disagree with this statement when clearly there are beings that are already immortal such they do not die due to the passage of time. An example of this would be the special Force wielder race. Another example of immortality is the Jedi Force technique that allows for the ghost, or spirit of a Force sensitive that had died to live on without a body. Truly there are many instances of things like this, but it is true that sometimes you cannot save everyone. Sometimes it is what it is. Chapter 27. V.1, C.27 Jedi Order 3. Night Cycle. Coruscant. Having just arrived as the giant city spanning across the planet slumbers or at least tries to sleep as there are still multiple vehicles and sounds produced throughout, the ship transporting Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan and Anakin arrives. Coruscant sure is mesmerizing to look at sometimes, don't you think? Anakin says out loud. It is a sight to see for sure, but instead of looking around we should head for the Jedi Temple. There you will get your very own quarters to live and sleep in, and the next day someone will escort you to the area you need to go. Qui-Gon tells Anakin. Okay. Anakin responds with a short reply. They had to take a transport vehicle to take them towards the Jedi Temple. As the three of them enter said vehicle, Obi-Wan speaks towards the driver. Take us to the Jedi Temple. The driver responds. Righto. Driving through the high-rise buildings and the airlane traffic that is congested, they take their time getting back to the temple, tired mentally from the long journey and the events that had happened through the past few days. Obi-Wan decides to question Anakin about a few things. Anakin, I heard that you quite the good empath and telepathic person. From what I know, that is true. Tell me how you do it. I would like to learn how you hide yourself within the Force. It is quite powerful and would be useful, no doubt, in any future mission I partake in. It is not something that can be instantly recreated from my understanding. It would take a lot of time and patience with a high degree of talent in psychic abilities related to the mind. Anakin replies as Kagan just listens to the conversation between the two with mild interest. Is that right? I guess that is too bad. Obi-Wan finishes because despite his patient nature, he is not that talented with psychic abilities. His talents lay within dueling, and even then he still has much to learn. The Jedi basically do what I do already anyway. From what I have been recently informed on by Master Kagan, was that the Jedi meditate a lot, and this is not too much different from my methods. Anakin continues. It is just the way my powers have progressed are different from what would be considered normal. That is fine. I was just curious as to your abilities, and if there was a way to replicate its effects. We are nearly there. Kagan speaks up after Obi-Wan finishes. Looking out towards the Jedi Temple, Anakin can say that the grandeur will probably not be lost to him. I know I would probably not be able to reform the Jedi in any capacity really, but that doesn't mean they should be left to die. Well, at least the children should live the massacre. In fact, I could probably stop Sidious's plan for the clones. What's more is that I could bring over the clones to my side and have them respect me just as they did the original. I wouldn't mind a few extra comrades. The transport vehicle stops at the dock. The 2 Jedi Knights and 1 Padawan exit the vehicle. Where is my pay? The driver asks a little brashly. Kagan gives the man some credits before he zooms away, leaving the Jedi behind. Right this way then. Kagan directs as Anakin and Obi-Wan follow along. Walking towards the Jedi Order's entrance, Anakin starts to mentally communicate with -47 Hong Kong dollars. HK, did you do what I requested of you? Yes, Master. I have successfully transported the deactivated droids left on Naboo. HK responds immediately. Good, very good. You have done well. You can go back to your primary directive and await for further instructions. Yes, Master. HK responds as Anakin cuts off the connection. What were the Naboo going to do with all those droids except recycle them all into scrap and maybe sell them off? Which they did sell the droids, but instead of making a huge-scale sale to some corporation publicly, Anakin had convinced Padme to give him the droids. Specifically, he had said his mother, Shmi, would pay for the droids through an official request. This would allow Padme to make some economic recovery to help aid the rebuilding efforts and would help Anakin further increase his droid army. It makes it all the easier that the droid army left on Naboo is directly connected to the control ship he had stolen. Something interesting had also happened with the droids, specifically the droids on Dathomir he has stashed. The elite droids he had created had started to worship him in a weird way, proclaiming him as their god and creator, which technically he is, but they had started developing their own culture, truly turning them into a society ready to emerge. Anakin's not complaining as he saw no problems with this. The elite droids he created, at least to him, were now full living beings, and it seems they have appreciated his efforts to help them develop on their own, to have their own freedoms and liberties. Fortunately, they do not see Anakin in a negative light considering he controls them and the unliving droids, but in fact encourage what they had started to call being blessed. He had seen this himself, and reports were coming in from his new minion, Grievous. Right, Obi-Wan, you can go. I have to take Anakin here to his new accommodation. Yes, Master. You do not need refer to me that way anymore, Obi-Wan. You have rightfully earned yourself the title of Jedi Knight. Kagan says proudly. Thank you, but I do not think I will ever see you as anything less. Right, go on then. Kagan exasperatedly replies. Okay, I will be heading off now. And Anakin, why don't you come see me sometime? I am sure I could also help you in your studies if you would like. Maybe explain a few things. Obi-Wan starts to walk off in the direction of his own accommodation with a hop in his step. I would like that, thank you. Anakin politely replies. After Obi-Wan leaves, the 2 Kagan directs Anakin. Come on, this way then. After a brisk walk over to the room assigned to Anakin, Kagan speaks. Here you are then. For now, this is your room here at the Jedi Temple. Thank you, Master. Smiling, Kagan replies. You should get some rest now. You have had a long past few days and your troubles will not stop there. You still have much to learn. Okay, I will head in now. Goodbye. Anakin enters his new housing for the foreseeable future as Kagan heads off to his own room, no doubt wanting to catch up on some much-needed sleep. This is quite Spartan, but what did I expect from the Jedi? At least I can decorate this place however I want. The walls, ceiling and floor were a standard white color. There were no decorations and very limited space, but enough for a bed, various drawers, a closet, and some leftover room for himself. I think I will head to bed for now. I think it is about time I have some normal dreams for now. Anakin hops on the Spartan-like bed and falls asleep, not bothering to enter a meditative state, seeking some normal sleep. Day cycle. Coruscant. Opening his eyes, Anakin gets up off of the bed. I feel pretty well rested. I guess it is time I make my debut. Looking towards his own internal clock, he would say it is about early sunrise. The reason Anakin needs less sleep than the average human was his telepathic abilities reinforcing his mind, and in fact he could completely go without sleep if he just meditates 2 hours every day. Deciding that waiting around was quite boring, he decides to connect with HK through the mental link he has and starts to get a report of the daily building slave uprising on Tatooine. The slaves-turned-workers that remain on the planet were those most invested in the Free the Slaves movement. It was quite underground, at least for now, but they knew someone was sponsoring them. I can't possibly buy every slave, as there are some very disturbed individuals whom would not release them. Not all slavers were kind or generous enough to bargain away their slaves, and not all of the slaves that were owned by the same person were for sale, so they needed some other way out of their situation. One such situation had occurred when he was younger that had to do with a special race of a human-like species known as ghostlings. In fact, he had rescued a young princess, the very same young princess of that ghostling species, along with other captives. It was easy enough, and thankfully he had built up enough resources and power to safely secure the children, otherwise it would have been harder to help them out. He would still do it, of course, but with much more caution. Anyway, I think I had gained an admirer. I believe it was the very same princess I had indirectly rescued, and from what I knew I had decided to capitalize on this hero worship. Getting another ally is all the more good for me, but I doubt her childish affection still holds after all these years. Maybe the feelings of gratitude, but puppy love won't be there to blind her. Meditating some more, Anakin reflected on his progress with the mental arts he had developed, or more like redeveloped for the Force. The levels indicated by him were a very vague standard, and was not a perfect classification of the developed powers he would gain and continuously grow in strength. The mind arts were a very hard thing to practice, and after his initial momentum it had slowed down quite a bit. His mastery through his mind had thankfully gone as far to the master grade, but his mental intrusion force technique had stagnated simply because he felt it wrong to just willy-nilly invade a person's mind with a technique that could make them brain dead. It was a dangerous technique he had developed, and could be deployed in combative situations to put others into a sort of trance. An illusion, or can straight up rip the mind of another apart, so he was not without a means to protect himself. His mental capacity had expanded to allow him parallels thoughts where there are technically two of him that is active at the same time. His mind has been accelerated beyond belief just through telepathy alone, not including the benefits of the ritual. And even though the passive emotion sensing ability is rather annoying with him having limited control over his emotion sensing capabilities, it could overwhelm him if he is not careful. At least that was how it was at the start. Now he would be safe from the emotions given off by anyone really. Mechadaru had come a long way as well. What with the massive amount of droids, ships and other technologies he has connected himself to, he is certainly in a good position with it. Other branches he has started developing to this technique was what he referred to as a virus. Instead of having to be near something to take it over, he would implant a virus based off of his force signature, capture and reprogram a device or computer-based systems. This essentially allows him to bypass a lot of systems put in place to protect against attacks of this nature. Except his was through the Force, and normal technology has no chance of resisting his control. If another person through the Force has control of a droid, he would be unable to control it unless he is stronger, has time and the necessary skill, or the original user is killed or disconnects from said thing. That about settles everything. But this is only the beginning. Well, technically I began nearly as soon as I was born, but that is besides the point. I can now finally expand my knowledge of the Force and learn properly. I have grand plans and don't plan to stop with just the Force itself. There is a glaring flaw with most Force sensitives, and that is despite being pretty overpowered compared to the average being, their bodies lack great strength and endurance. This is something I will have to change, at least for myself, and this would require some Force abilities that I would need to experiment with, or I will have to look into advanced technologies. An example being something like nanites introduced into my system, reinforcing, healing and making my body stronger. For something like this, it would probably not take too long to develop, because I do have something similar in the works. As Anakin is still meditating, going over his progress, a knock at the door could be heard disrupting his thought process. Oh well, I guess it is time to get busy again. Chapter 28. V.1, C.28 Jedi Order 4. Day Cycle. Coruscant. As Anakin is still meditating, going over his progress, a knock at the door could be heard disrupting his thought process. Oh well, I guess it is time to get busy again. Anakin stops his meditation and approaches the door while thinking at the same time. From what I sense, the person behind the door is not Kagan, and I have become quite familiar with his Force signature. Opening the door, Anakin sees who has come to see him. Young Padawan Skywalker. I have come to explain to you your schedule throughout your training. The person who spoke was Mace Windu, Anakin's other new master. Master Windu, you have come to be my guide? Yes, that is true. I will introduce to you the areas that matter when you stay here. Usually, a person would have a clan they would join here, but due to your special circumstances you would just be joining in classes suitable to both my own and Qui-Gon's time schedule. Mace starts to walk, and Anakin follows from behind. First I will be showing you the area where communal meals are held. This is where you will be able to have some sustenance. I am quite hungry, Anakin says while thinking. It is good I don't have to worry about food and can, while eating with everyone, try to gain some connections. Yes, you will be seated within a hall with all the other younglings. They both continue before stopping at an entrance that is the communal eating area. Right, for now I will stop my guiding here, as you should eat before we continue. You will wait here after the time to eat has finished, and I will come back. Okay, Master. Thank you. Anakin bows slightly. While Mace leaves, Anakin enters the hall where he can see many people. Many children sitting in groups, but because it is very early in the morning there are not many students. Right time to get some food. From what I see there are not that many, what I would consider important people, so there is no point in staying here too long. Hey you! Someone calls out to Anakin, a small female child that looks around his actual age. Is this Barriss Offee? The friend of Ahsoka, or at least would-be friend. It seems that the age of the current one is of the Legends version, as in the Clone Wars she was de-aged to fit in more with the show. Yes, hello. Anakin greets the girl. You must be new around here. Did you perhaps only recently join the Order? I did not think that was allowed. Usually only people way younger than you are allowed to join. That is right. I am new here. I have only recently become a part of the Order. That's cool and a bit weird from the norm, but welcome. Force studies take place in the morning. Students were taught the ways of the Force and its 3 applications: control, sense, and alter. Midday studies focused on traditional classroom instruction, where non-Jedi instructors taught an assortment of lessons including political strategy, galactic law, the sciences, and language. The afternoons were dedicated to physical activities, including lightsaber training. Taught Forms I through Form 6 of lightsaber combat by highly qualified instructors. Initiates practiced with training lightsabers until they crafted their own in the caves of Ilum. 5 mandatory mediation sessions were mixed into the day, as well as communal meals. At least this was the standard schedule given to me. Mace Windu had guided him around throughout the day and introduced him to the classes he would be taking, who he would be participating in trainings with, and some such nonsense. Most of what is on the list, or schedule for him, was the standard list given to younglings. Well, more like younglings are guided in this direction, slowly getting used to their new style of life. Anakin has to do the same, but it is better this way as there is still some time left over for him to continue his own plans, so he is not completely at the will of this academic course. He also takes some days off to further advance and be trained by Kagan or Mace. From what he understands, at least in terms of the first things he has to learn, control, sense, and alter are the basic applications that a Force-sensitive can do. Control is internal. It is the Jedi's ability to recognize the Force in himself and to use it to his benefit. Kagan has said to Anakin. The Jedi Order's teaching method began with the aspect of control, taught to Jedi initiates as a way to open their minds to the Force and establish a base point for further development. The theme of control was centered on the ability to control one's own body, as self-control was the starting point for all Jedi teachings. Development of these skills would continue throughout a Jedi's life, as the basics of all other disciplines of Force use began here. One of the most well-known side effects of mastering the discipline of control was prolonged life and the avoidance of decay. 3 main abilities were centered around control: Tutaminas, Curato Salva, and Alta Soper. These 3 umbrella abilities incorporated many of the abilities Jedi used throughout their service to the Republic. Tutaminas was an umbrella title used by the Jedi Order to classify Force abilities related to energy absorption. Anakin had used a version of this to subdue Maul's attacks against Kagan on Naboo, and he had also applied it for Maul as well, just so he could keep his body intact. Curato Salva was an umbrella skill used by the Jedi Order to classify Force abilities related to self-healing, and a lot of the time this ability is used passively or subconsciously without someone being aware that they are healing themselves at accelerated rate. Anakin has a version of this in the form of the dark side magic ritual and his own subconscious activation of said technique. There are not many Jedi who even know of how to use medic-based or healing-based force techniques, so this is an area Anakin would be most interested in. The last of the control domain is Altus Soper, the traditional term for the ability to increase a user's focus on the force. Sense involves the next step, in which the Jedi recognizes the force in the universe outside herself. Classified as sensibilities by the Jedi Order, these techniques were taught to Padawans to broaden the scope of their control abilities. Dipping into a deeper understanding of the living force, sensibilities allowed force wielders to immerse themselves in the environment. By the end of their apprenticeship, Padawans were expected to use the force as an additional sense, constantly attuned to the undulation of the force. The Jedi Order saw the sensibilities divided into 4 main groups: Prima Vitae, Tactus Odium, Tai Vordrax/Psychometry, and Projected Telepathy. While there were many other styles to the sense family, these were considered the most vital to Jedi teachings. Anakin in particular would be extremely powerful in regards to the sense skill tree, and its abilities being considered as the most important certainly puts Anakin at an advantage. Life detection, also known in traditional High Galactic as Prima Vitae, was a basic sense-based force power that allowed a force sensitive to feel the presence of living things or beings and detect their positions at long range. Anakin's senses were primarily tuned and would only grow with the passage of time. He could slightly thank his telepathy for that. Sense Force, also known as C-Force or in traditional High Galactic as Tactus Odium, was a sense-based force power. It allowed an individual to sense the ambient force in a given area. It could not be used to detect sentient beings, but allowed an individual to sense the magnitude of force in an area or object, and even if that force was aligned with the dark side of the force or the light. This ability Anakin also has, as he was able to tell the distinction between the dark side alignment of force energy on Tatooine and Dathomir. Even here on Coruscant there is the presence of a lingering darkness that the absolute light of the Jedi hide. They do this unknowingly of course, but even still, if Anakin could sense it, wouldn't that mean the Jedi should be able to as well? Psychometry, also known as postcognition, Tai Vordrax or telemetry, was a force power that was a mental technique of picking up impressions and traces of information about the object touched and the events that have surrounded it. This ability, even though sounds quite basic, it could come in handy within a lot of circumstances. But Anakin did not bother to develop this when he was younger, as there was no need. It would have been pointless to do so, as there was nothing of particular interest that could be found. He doesn't even know where to begin when trying to practice such an ability. The last ability that Anakin has become most familiar with, telepathy. The very basic ability to read and interact with other minds, mentally communicate and project the user's thoughts over small or vast distances with other individuals. Alter is the third and most difficult area to master, for it involves the student's ability to modify the force and redistribute its energies. An advanced form of force use, many non-trained force sensitives stumbled upon this group of powers accidentally, usually resulting in disastrous events. Untamed, these force powers can cause mass chaos, as the art of manipulating other objects must be perfected and honed. Within the Jedi Order, these abilities were considered to be alter abilities and were taught to Jedi Knights who had mastered the art of control and sense. Capable of affecting the environment, these abilities were vital to a successful knight, as without them, individuals could see the Force, but were incapable of manipulating it. In the Order of the Jedi, the Great Masters considered the techniques of telekinesis, affect mind, and alter environment to make up this family of abilities. So, the more cool telekinetic-based abilities or the creation of shooting electricity through my fingertips might be off the table for now. Anakin thought to himself. I could work on other abilities, but I have another project to take care of in my free time, so it would be prudent I finish that first. Anakin. A voice calls out, but Anakin is currently distracted. It would be cool though, being able to do these things, so for now I will put off the development of alter-based abilities because there must be a reason I need to master both sense and control first. Anakin continuously was inside this thoughts, clearly distracted, not paying attention to his surroundings. Even though he has a lot of mental power, he currently has one of his thoughts processes meditating, whilst the other is now distracted. From what I remember, there are a lot of abilities that would be considered alter, and from among them I am only really interested in some that would make me more powerful. Art of the Small comes to my mind, and if I am able to recreate this technique I would be able to modify my physical self. Padawan Skywalker. Being woken up from his distracted state of mind, Anakin is reminded that he is actually currently within a lesson. The person who had spoken to him at this moment was his current teacher, a Jedi instructor from the Education Division. Well, I think I should start to try and increase the amount of thoughts I can have at the same time, or should have at least left some awareness for my surroundings. The person who had been saying his name was one of the Jedi younglings he had become acquainted with, Barris. He was put into a class that was of a similar age group as himself while not being too hard to catch up in regards to teachings. At least that was what Mace had told him when he was put with a bunch of children, but he is not going to complain as he well knows there is a lot for him to learn. Now that I have everyone's attention, shall we continue with the lesson? The instructor glares a bit at Anakin, deciding to stop meditation, which he is doing at the same time. He gets his other though process to connect with -47 Hong Kong dollars. Hey HK, do you think you could go somewhere for me? Yes master, anything and anywhere. I am always available. Chapter 29. V.1, C.29 Nanosut I. Dathomir. It was fun at first, but now it has gotten boring. At least that was what Grievous thought as he had been engaging in minimal combat as soon as they decided to take over the planet of Dathomir. Grievous did not have much to do after the small skirmishes that had taken place. And in fact, he would not have even been able to do anything given the elite droids or even the mass amount of machines there are at Anakin's disposal. You can use as much as you want. It doesn't matter, but from what I understand about the conditions of the planet, it would make a good starting point to help build my very own empire. Grievous had been told as such through a communication device. Please, tell me there is more for me to do. Why, of course. Grievous asks in a disbelieving tone. Really? I thought there was nothing to do for the next coming few years. A few things here and there, sure, but nothing else. Did you forget one of your goals, your desires that you gained after joining up with me? Goal. You wanted something, but I guess if you can't even remember that, then you don't want it. Anakin trailed off. Grievous, getting a bit frustrated and impatient, says, Well, don't you tell me already? Calm down, no need to get your wires tangled. Anakin said to calm him down, then continued. You wanted to use the Force, right? Grievous' eyes lit up with recognition. Yes. Do you know how to be able to make me Force sensitive? You finally figured it out. Yes and no. I give you some pretty basic Force sensitivity, but it would not be to the extent of most Force sensitives and would only go so far as the droid's capabilities. When can you give me these abilities? I will have to recreate your mechanical body parts with a new material. I have an idea to not only give you Force powers, but while I am at it, upgrade your suit. Upgrade? Yes, I will remake you with a much better material I have synthesized myself, that allows for a greater amount non-organic midichlorians. This will increase your capabilities and make it easier for you to access the Force. Another thing I will have to do is operate on what is left of your fleshy self and implant a special device capable of making you and the metal I am remaking you out of fully compatible materials with no room for errors to occur. This new body and operation will allow me to have the ability to use the Force? As simple as that. As simple as that. Finally what he had been looking for, a way to increase his power. Unlike the original Grievous, this one has not been taught lightsaber combat, so there would be no skills related to that. Anakin had decided to try and make sure he reclaims or gain those skills, but he himself had no proper instructor until he started in the Jedi. And even then he had been trying to learn other things as well, slowing down progress that would be made. Grievous and his desires are far from over though, as he wants to see the Republic crash and burn for the perceived wrongs they had done against him. Anakin had agreed that the Republic was being set up to fail, and its course was set with no one to help steer the ship to safety. So the Republic would burn. But Grievous had calmed down over the few years spent working for Anakin and has learned to understand that not everyone is responsible for the Senate's failings. Don't worry, you just focus on what we want to accomplish here on Dathomir. Build it up to become capable of defending itself, the residents who live here, and establishing my rule. What about the Night Sisters? Oh right. I guess our co-rule over the planet. The sisters know not to overstep their bounds as they had not had much to do with the takeover and can now share the benefits. At least they helped in controlling the settlements. Grievous stands up for the sisters here, as he had grown to respect their power. That is true, but I don't want them getting any ideas about trying to take over themselves, and that is why you have to be careful with them. Now that I will make you capable in using the Force, it would be much easier dealing with them. I hope. Grievous says, knowing their prowess has only grown with the time and resources Anakin supplies for them. Talzin had taken to slightly reforming her people to make them more tolerant of others. Specifically more tolerant for others related to Anakin and Anakin himself. This was because of the huge favor he had done for her. Talzin had seen her son's near-death experience and had known Anakin had somehow come in to save Maul from death. At least that is what she thinks. Grievous had also been involved in an event that included the Night Sisters and a Jedi called Quinlan Vos. Anakin had told him to get involved and make sure that the Night Sisters do not try and enslave the man. It would be disastrous to their cause. 3 months into his retraining, Quinlan Vos was sent to Dathomir to investigate the local witches, following reports that they had something to do with the planet Ova mysteriously vanishing. Anakin had further supplied the Night Sisters as long as they abolished their slavery, and he had done so with some success as they had become dependent on him and what he provided. But there were always people who are against change, so Grievous was meant to be Anakin's eyes and ears in this situation. Even though all of the droids given to the sisters were also controlled by Anakin, he still wanted a living being to keep him informed. Grievous had told his master that they would bring him trouble. Whatever the issue is, they had avoided the Jedi with some expertise and well-timed interactions. Grievous had made sure to shield the Jedi from any potential harm given the sisters' disdain for them. Quinlan Vos had been sent on his way after his timely rescue with him, none the wiser of his potential encounter. Grievous had been given some words of thanks from the man, and while Grievous did not care for it much, especially since he also had some anger towards the Jedi, he had managed to abstain from lashing out. That was not the most important part though, because the sisters had another plan that Anakin also had an interest in. The Star Temples. I am aware that the now united Night Sisters of Dathomir are looking for ancient massive pyramid-shaped buildings constructed by the Qua. Do you wish for me to also keep an eye on them for this as well? No, I already have some of the elite guard looking into it quietly. I have trained them well enough to hide their presence from most Force sensitives. Anakin then continued. They will report to you, which then you will report back to me. Right? A line of command has to be maintained, and even though they are capable enough, they still have much to learn. Anakin explained his reasoning of making sure the droids he made alive were well adapted to many of the structures of normal society. If the gate was ever activated, and thus subjecting infinity to the physical world, the planet housing the equipment would collapse into the Infinity Gate, along with the surrounding planets, moons, and even suns. The Night Sisters succeeded in capturing the Prime Gate on Dathomir along with the Star Temple and nearly slaughtered many Qui, the native species and creators of the gates. Again, through the timely intervention by Anakin via his elite droids and Grievous, they had managed to end that quickly. They were quite powerful at one point, so why not induct them into Anakin's Grand Empire plans? The Night Sisters had intended to access the secrets of the Infinity Gate and use its abilities to project a wave containing infinity's power to destroy Coruscant, as well as surrounding planets and stars. Originally the Jedi, Quinlan Vos had taken care of this issue, but Anakin decided to usurp from the sisters this extremely powerful technology for his own use. Grievous was a bit nervous. He had gained even more power, but that was par for the course. Anakin did not intend to use such a destructive device because it would be a waste. Coruscant. Science is quite the weird subject, especially within the universe he currently resides in. Anakin had gone in-depth with his studies, and intended to make sure he was not limited to the teachings of the Jedi. He wanted knowledge, both theoretical and practical, in most if not all the sciences so he could make a complete picture for what he intended to create. He had ideas and started to implement these ideas by seeing if he could perform or get some medical droids he has control over to test out his plan, his test subject being Grievous. Anakin did not lie about granting Grievous the opportunity to use the Force, but what Anakin did not tell him was the risks of what he wanted to do. Nor did he tell him he was to be his first test subject. What Anakin wanted to focus on were nanomachines, or more specifically he had designed an implant and suit made specifically out of nanites. The idea is they would be connected to him, as if it were another arm or leg he could control at will. It would work in a similar way to the Space Marines armor from the 40K universe and the Krynet nanosuit. It would in every sense of the word be living, but it would be living through him, as in the suit would become a part of him, and this is why he required an implant so he would be able to fully make a connection. Mecha Daru would not be enough, and implanting the suit with the non-organic midichlorians is also not enough. The design of the suit would be extremely similar to the Krynet nanosuit with a lot of its capabilities, but would be much thinner and could retract in a similar way to the Blue Beetle. There would be a point that the nanomachines are kept within a storage area, preferable, made out of a strong material like Beskar. I would very much like to make the suit out of Beskar as well, but I simply at this moment of time don't have the necessary materials. The nanosuit would be able to switch between one of 4 modes: armor, strength, speed, and cloak. Armor mode diverts the energy supply of the nanosuit into absorbing the kinetic energy of incoming projectiles and other damaging forces, such as hazardous levels of heat, radiation, and energy blasts, effectively making the user temporarily invulnerable to true physiological damage and thus withstanding impacts which would normally be lethal. Strength mode enhances the user's physical strength to superhuman levels. Speed mode enhances the user's movement speed, allowing for a faster jogging speed or a superhuman sprint. When cloak mode is activated, the nanosuit would alter its outer surface through the use of a crystalline generation, capable of fully absorbing or bending incoming wave spectrums such as visible light, radio waves, infrared, and possibly microwaves or others, to render itself completely invisible to the human eye and most surveillance equipment. Quite the list of modes he wishes to include, so he would get another increase to his power. There are also secondary functions that are meant to make it easier for Anakin in a lot of situations where his normal human capabilities wouldn't allow, and if he was cut off from the Force. There are ways to dampen a Force sensitive's abilities and senses after all. While Anakin was thinking to himself, he had received a call that went straight to his communication device. Answering the call, Anakin says, Yes. The revolt on Geonosis has been unsuccessful. It seems that Poggle the Lesser has not been able to succeed Haddis as Archduke. Grievous is the one who had called him. Right, I knew this was coming, but why call me about it? Did something different happen? We were successful in gaining and setting up a trade agreement between us and them. We have also put a stop to Sidious and his plans to take over and continuously use them. Once Poggle the Lesser was in power for 2 years now, Darth Sidious's intentions became clear. He wanted control of the droid factories to supply B-1 series battle droids to the Trade Federation for an invasion of Naboo. Poggle, grateful for Sidious's help, gladly struck a deal with the Trade Federation. The fact that Poggle and Trade Federation Viceroy Newt Gunray hated each other, but still worked together was a great testament to the influence of the Sith Lord. Despite Poggle being unsuccessful in his succession, he had managed to gain enough control of the droid facilities on their planet. This would make Dooku going to Poggle the same, but the amount of droids that could be supplied has been cut in half. So the two, both Poggle and Haddis, had become co-rulers, co-archdukes over the droid factories. This limits Palpatine a lot more, and is much better for Anakin and most of the galaxy for the long run. Shortly after the Trade Federation was defeated at the Battle of Naboo, Poggle was approached by the rogue Jedi Count Dooku, revealing himself as Darth Tyrannus, the new apprentice of Darth Sidious. Dooku formed a partnership with Poggle. The co-archduke would ensure that Geonosis was among the founding worlds of the Confederacy of Independent Systems and would supply a large amount of the separatist droid army. In return, Poggle would be paid large sums of money for his trouble, and Geonosis would earn a place on the high order of the new Confederacy. This partnership was lucrative. Poggle even took the liberty to create a new B-2 super battle droid for the Confederacy. Sapping Sidious' power is greater for more in the long run. Right now it may not stop him all too much, but it would allow me to further build up and may even delay his takeover. Chapter 30. V.1, C.30 Nanosuit 2. Secondary functions that Anakin would apply to the nanosuit were things that he himself would be incapable of accessing normally with his human physiology. The nanosuit incorporates its own communications equipment, allowing for hands-free voice and slash or video communications over a wide range of frequencies. The visor of the nanosuit is capable of heightening received light, acting as night vision goggles. The suit possesses a binoculars function integrated into the visor, allowing the operator of the suit to tag enemy units, ammunition, and vehicles for future reference and engagement. This information can also be relayed onto allied units. The binoculars also magnify distant sound, enabling the user able to hear the lightest of sounds from far away. The suit features an onboard supercomputer which allows it to remotely interface with and hack most electronic devices, either military and civilian, even alien. The suit incorporates a small internal oxygen supply for underwater activity. It automatically recharges when the user re-enters a breathable atmosphere. It also incorporates an array of hydrothrusters that allow increased speed during speed mode sprinting, as well as high maneuverability when submerged. This functionality also permits the nanosuit to move in a zero-gravity environment by utilizing atmospheric gases as reaction mass. Several magnetic holsters will be put on the suit for weapon storage and management. It incorporates data connectivity to a network of Anakin's choosing, allowing the suit to display critical information on its HUD. Computers can interface with the nanosuit in order to access this network. Additionally, information about the nanosuit as well as the wearer's vital signs can be accessed from the network by those he trusts to rescue him in a pinch. Capable of recording audio-visual and environmental data, allowing the user to document whatever circumstances they encounter. It will also maintain body temperature if it detects critically suboptimal temperatures in the surrounding environment, and can keep the user alive even at -130 degrees Celsius -200 degrees Fahrenheit. A special defrosting function is also introduced. If the suit does somehow get frozen, the user of the suit can initiate the defrosting device and the nanosuit will be fully capable of movement again. The suit's transceiver can be used to broadcast a signal that can disable communications and allows a person to send the signal through a wireless connection via the nanosuit. It is capable of deactivating the shields of a lot of things. The last secondary feature that Anakin intends to put most of his focus on is symbiosis, considering he wants the suit to be a part of him, an extension of his arm if you will. Over time, the suit would also directly interface with the wearer's brain. This allows the wearer to use the suit's processors as like a part of their own brain, essentially making most of their thought processes happen outside of their own brain. The wearer's personality and memories would also be copied and stored in the suit's deep layers. Once fully merged, the wearer no longer appears to wear the suit, but has access to all the suit's functions. I will hold off on making the suit for now as I want to make sure it is perfect because of the function, symbiosis. After learning as much as he could as a youngling, and their training he had already successfully completed everything, and the only reason he hasn't officially become a Padawan yet is again because of his age. Thankfully, even though the Jedi Order has seemingly refused to let him go on missions, he is still able to advance his studies within the Jedi. Kagan and Windu had been dutiful masters and had spared no efforts in helping him develop. It seems though that Windu had been very reluctant in giving Anakin the opportunity to learn his lightsaber form. Only recently had Anakin started to ask more about it, and Windu was obviously against it, but he could tell his initial resistance to teaching him has decreased. Slowly but surely, I will learn this form of lightsaber technique. Anakin's appeal for this style links back to the idea it draws from the dark side of the Force, and it would be a step in the right direction to increase his understanding of it. The dark side of the Force has what some would consider unnatural abilities, like was said by Sidious, and it is true that a lot of the powers and abilities a lot would consider it as such. The Jedi certainly condemn powers like that. There would be no room for Anakin to learn of the dark side and its abilities then from another user of the dark side of the Force, which are not exactly in short supply but is much less than the Jedi. The Night Sisters would not teach him. He knows this, and it would be too dangerous to risk the chance from learning under Palpatine, as Anakin could not ensure his own safety. What I can do though, is look for holocrons based off of the Sith which would help me learn some techniques and delve into their powers. Form 7, known by its two primary disciplines of Juyo and Vapad, and also known as the Ferocity form, was the seventh form of lightsaber combat. It was considered the most aggressive and unpredictable form. Both Mace Windu and Depa Billaba were the only known masters of the Vapad variant in the Jedi Order that hadn't fallen to the dark side of the Force. The sole Form 7 variant to have gained recognition by the Jedi Council, Vapad, was only created in the final decades of the Jedi Order. The key architect of Vapad was Jedi Master Mace Windu, who developed the form to address his weakness by controlling his inner darkness and channeling it into worthy ends. For this purpose, he refined advances from the preceding centuries and, in the minds of some, finally perfected Form 7 as a true lightsaber form in line with the tenets of the Jedi Code. Windu had liked to remind Anakin of the fact that his form that he created was extremely dangerous to those of an untrained mind, with enough willpower to overcome the dark side. It was true in a sense that giving in to the nature of the dark side was dangerous with a lot of examples to show for it. But Anakin believed that there had to be some form of balance one could achieve. Form 7 would be a part of his path to achieve this balance. Windu himself was wary of allowing others to study the form outside of his own Padawan pupil, well aware of the danger it posed. Practitioners of Vapad drew on their anger and passion but never gave in to them. Compared with the other lightsaber forms, which directed warriors to master their emotions, Vapad's approach was dangerous. I have mastered the core powers of the Jedi. Within control, sense and alter. And it was surprisingly easy, or should I not be surprised with the ease in which I had basically learnt everything I would need within a year. Force speed and force stealth from the control area. Force sight, farseeing, force empathy and telepathy, but Anakin had already really developed these abilities so he did not benefit much from this. Telekinesis is last, and it is an ability that Anakin had also developed already, but had not been able to properly master himself. There were also multiple ways one could use telekinesis, whether that apply oneself or onto others. Force jump or leap and force push and pull. Dathomir. Grievous did not have to go to any top-of-the-line medical facility or anything like that to start his procedure as all the droids needed were capable of performing the task. Anakin had made sure they were. Grievous would be lying if he said he was not excited. These powers he would be able to access would help him in the future, when in service to his master and his own goals. The first operation to take place would be the one that I dub as the implant. This will connect to the mechanical parts that has turned you into a cyborg. Anakin had told him. These parts will be reapplied after your recovery from the operation, and you will have to go through standard medical checkups within the next month. Within a month's time, if everything is okay, then you should be able to finally equip your parts. Anakin continued explaining. Are there any risks to this procedure? Obviously, even if he has a certain level of trust and loyalty, Grievous still wants to live and he would want to know of some side effects, if any. Anakin responded. There are no known side effects, but what you will be going through mentally will be something else, as your mind will try to establish a proper connection to the implant where you would claim control of. This implant will act as the main interface and programming for the new body you are to be granted. A many number of things will be made available to you. If you have any more questions, please ask them now. Anakin was presiding over the operation through a screen and has directly taken control of one of the droids present. No, I have no more. Right, I will start now. Fortunately, you can be and will be put to sleep with a tranquilizer. And with Anakin's final words, Grievous had blacked out. The next few days, Grievous had been in and out of consciousness because he was trying to establish his control over the chip implanted into him. The chip was created by Anakin to act as interference, and to help establish the initial connection needed for someone to become one with the machinery to be connected to him. After the month had come to an end, Anakin had then explained to Grievous his current state of being. I feel weird. Grievous had said. Of course, your mind now that it has fully acclimated to its new capabilities allows for you some very minor force-related abilities. Anakin said. Your senses, even though not as advanced as they could be, have now opened up your mind. Specifically, you now have a special talent when it comes to machines. Similar to my talent, but you have more interface while my developed abilities are more instinctual. Anakin voices through the droid, he habitually controlled to monitor Grievous' progress. So, I can get my parts now. I can have a full functioning body along with abilities related to the Force. Yes. It will take some time as you will feel new sensations with your mechanic body parts than what you originally were able to feel. Like what? It is the process your body and mind will be fully connecting to each other, and like my elite droids where their parts have become alive in a sense. You too will also have this. The synthesized voice of the droid said. You won't feel pain in the traditional sense, it will be more of a mental backlash at losing a part of your new self. I will be able to feel again? Not in the traditional sense. Again, a lot of what you are now and what you will become will be similar to the elite droids. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's reapply my parts. What happened next was a sequence of events that had nearly drove Grievous to tears as he was able to sense but not physically sense with his newfound force sensitivity. What I would classify as force-sensitive enough to perform feats at a similar level of normal Jedi or Sith is to have a midi-chlorian count as high as around 7,500. Anakin thought to himself. When conducting various tests, Anakin had to make sure the non-organic midi-chlorian count would try to dip to the original levels Grievous had before integration, otherwise it would have been all for naught. Thank you. I can't thank you enough. I did not know I would be able to really sense anything. Well, nearly anything from my subordinates. No, you don't understand. I had been deprived of my senses, and now through the Force I can properly feel things again. Truly, I thank you. I accept your gratitude, but this is no time for this. I believe you should get used to your new self as it will take a while to readjust. Back with Anakin, he had just cemented his own resolve to go through with his own operation. Finally, with everything in place, I can integrate myself with my own special plan. The results from Grievous was within my own considerations. And I have finally collected all of the materials from the nanomachines, to the metals required and the chemicals. I have also synthesized the fibers required to go through with my suit. Now I just need to go through with the creation and operation. Chapter 31. V.1, C.31 Nanosuit 3. Tatooine. It had been a year since she had seen her child and every day she had missed him. Sure, she could call him through a communication device and seen him grow day by day, but it wasn't enough, at least for her it wasn't. Shmi had been keeping herself busy as to not feel lonely without Anakin. She did have some company in the kindly old lady that had become a grandmotherly figure to Anakin known as Jira. Jira practically visited her every day. She had taken a liking to the woman as she was the only real living presence around her. Sure, her son's construct, C-3PO, was good at helping her manage things with the business and on occasion kept her company. But it isn't the same. The only other people she had regular contact with were her subordinates living with her on Tatooine. The freed slaves that had been offered jobs were quite protective of her own simply because she was Anakin's mother. She had done things that they appreciated as well, but most of the impact done to slaves on Tatooine was heavily done by her son. She couldn't be any more proud of the fact that his same acts of kindness and major ones as well had helped shape a better future and lifestyle for those they had saved. Years ago she did not have much hope in being freed from slavery, and now that she is and is helping free slaves herself, it felt surreal. Hello Shmi. It is a nice day we are having, isn't it? A person had walked into the store her son and herself had started in. Welcome, what can we do for you? While the business they had built together was still progressing, she still liked doing such a simple task as keeping an eye out on the store. Obviously she wouldn't do this if she were not protected, but many types of protection were put in place in case of any danger to her life. I am here to pick up a droid commission. Okay, name please and I will get it for you right away. After Anakin left, she had become worried, especially since she found out he had somehow had a hand in helping the people of Naboo free themselves for the Trade Federation. News doesn't usually travel too fast from the Republic all the way out to the Outer Rims, but she had been making sure to keep up with current events. Even if she didn't, she would still be informed of anything important that could affect their business operations. Thank you for your patronage. Shmi said while the person had gotten his droid, he had ordered, promptly leaving the store. Even more surprised was she that her son had offered to buy up all of the droids left on Naboo from the Trade Federation. She didn't know what she would do with all of those droids, as she certainly had no way to stockpile and sell them all within a short period of time. Her son had it all handled though, and simply reassured her that it was for himself. Now while she has grown throughout the years herself in her mentality, that doesn't mean she lost her intelligence. Shmi trusted her son that what he had in mind for the droids was for the right purposes. And even if it wasn't, she would only scold him. She couldn't possibly see her son be in trouble and would outright deny that he is, even if she knows he is in the wrong. She is first a mother before anything else. C-3PO, can you bring me those parts from over there? That would be much appreciated. Sure, madam. She had to spend her time doing something than just reminiscing about her son and worriedly thinking about him and missing him. Much of her life she had spent with him after all, and she believed he had a calling that was meant for more than to just stay on Tatooine. Shmi was currently working on a small project of her own in relation to the many company properties she had brought and distributed across the Outer Rims and Republic. Skywalker Industries at this point had become a big name and was officially a part of the big leagues. In fact, her training and development of her very own products had been selling nicely as well. It wasn't just Anakin that had a knack for technology, he had to get it from somewhere. Anakin got it from her. She was currently working on an idea she had of her own for a while now. A grand design that would hopefully reshape the moisture farming on the planet of Tatooine, because she had seen that water was a big problem here. If the population continued to grow, the more the planet's economy would suffer because of an increase in demand for water. So she had taken it in for herself that she would help out. She was making a special core reactor meant to be used to farm the ambient water within the atmosphere at a more efficient rate. This would both make her more money to expand and more money to but more slaves to free them, whilst expanding the land she owns to increase the housing available to those freed slaves. I am nearly done with this thing. Hopefully I will be able to get this thing working. It was only one of the many components needed for her design to work. She had some help from some people whom she had helped educate within the company here on Tatooine in the process, but everything was mainly done by her. This would be officially her biggest project, to truly mark her own stuff done within instead of the things Anakin had designed or remodeled himself. Maybe I should start to get out more often. It might help me if I socialize with others. It probably won't fix my missing Anakin, but at least I would not feel alone. If Anakin were to hear her thoughts, he would probably tell her he doesn't plan to stay with the Jedi forever. They are a dying cause after all, and they will sink with the Republic. Shmi would continue throughout the rest of her day, continuing with her normal routine with the completion of her final phases and design of her project. Coruscant. After the month of non-stop surveillance and monitoring of Grievous, Anakin had everything ready, prepared for the next few days that it would take to go through with his options. Fortunately, he doesn't have to participate within any of the classes anymore due to his very rapid progression, but that doesn't mean he would be able to disappear from the Order for a few days. Thankfully, what he has to go through is different from Grievous, as he had a far more severe bodily condition. Another thing to take into account is that Anakin's physical prowess and healing capabilities have been influenced by his own training and the advanced healing factor granted to him through the ritual. What he needs to do now is wait for a day where he is completely free from having to train with either Kagan or Windu. Walking through the hallways, Anakin had decided to go for a simple walk to unwind, so he is not mentally stressed before the surgery. Anakin. Barriss had become a friend of Anakin's. Despite her childish nature, she was a somewhat good companion. Hey, I know you can hear me. Huh? Oh, it's just you, Barriss. I was just out for a stroll before I have my lesson with Windu. Maybe I can convince him to finally teach me Form 7. Barriss had practically been the only person he had properly befriended, while he had kept everyone else as acquaintances because they were still children mentally. The only person he had found tolerable enough was Barriss. There were a few other younglings that Anakin would have liked to befriend as well, but most were way younger than him. Well, someone is better than no one, I guess. By the way, why are you out of class? You trying to skip it or something? Barriss, with a little embarrassment on her face, answers. Something like that. Well, that's your decision then. What were you originally going to do before you coincidentally came across me? Anakin says before continuing. Anyway, you are welcome to join me, as I was just going to a training room that's empty to practice some lightsaber forms. Sounds good to me. Barriss replies. Anakin, to help advance himself at a quicker pace, decided he need to create another droid, but on specifically geared towards combat to do with close-ranged saber styles. The programming he put into was simple, and he didn't want to create a droid that was alive simply because he thinks it would get a beating from him. And it is true. It did get beat down more often than not, as Anakin adapted very well and very fast to mistakes made in his various forms. He made sure to update the droid settings as much as he could so he would be challenged, and he certainly was, but it was not enough to keep up with Anakin's pace. Here, let's get to it. You can go first. Anakin tells Barriss to fight the droid. Okay. Moving towards the droid, it activates, bringing itself back to droid consciousness, and prepares itself to battle Barriss. Barriss had gone with him a few times to practice, and after the very few first lessons, Anakin had surpassed her, and then had started to help her advance in her lightsaber forms as well. The practice sabers blare to life from both the droid and Barriss. The droid doesn't wait for Barris to attack first and goes in for the metaphorical kill. Clashing sabers against each other, it is clear to see that the droid is obviously overpowering Barris as she has not enough physical strength to overcome the droid. It is not her forte after all. Barris practiced the Sorisu fighting style, but where her true talents lied in were the healing arts that are derived from the Force. Halfway through the battle between the two, Barris manages to catch the droid off guard and disarms it. Well done, but you took a little longer than I would like. Anakin spoke up. I need to get to my training with Master Windu now. Do you? I am sorry for taking up your time. It's alright, but you should really practice a bit more with your form. It could become better and would allow you to finish faster. The quicker your opponent is incapacitated, the more energy you preserve in future situations. Thanks. I got to go now, see you later. Sure, some other time then. Anakin leaves first, heading towards where he would find Windu. Hey Master, what are we to learn today? Anakin asks his now master of 1 year. Today, Padawan Skywalker, I have only come to prepare you and inform you of some new training you are to take part in. New training? Yes. I have decided that you are ready to learn the Saber Form 7. Really? Wait, you said only inform and prepare, so I won't be starting today. No, you will be given some theoretical materials, so you would have to study a bit first. Study, really? Have I not already proven I can easy breeze through most of everything? No, in fact I can breeze through everything. While that may be true, it would be prudent that you tone that your overconfidence, young Padawan. Windu says with his signature raising of his eyebrows. Here is everything you will need, and your practice will start next week after I make sure you know everything. Windu passes over a few books and even a journal that Windu himself had created to document his experiences with Form 7. The rest of the day is up to you. Windu then, without waiting for a reply or goodbye, leaves. I guess I have finally broken his resolve to not teach me his style? Or has he realized all along I had not been as dangerous as he had at first thought when I was allowed into the order? Either way, this works for me, and now I have some free time to go through with the operation. I won't be able to gully heal or recover within a day's time, but a day should be enough that any scarring from the surgery is healed over. If not, I can just simply apply some basic bandaging to cover the scar. Sneaking away from the Jedi Temple, Anakin moves towards the shopfront his company had bought on Coruscant. Despite the large sum of money he had to pay for it, it is coming in handy right now. A medical facility was made inside separate from the rest of the shop as Anakin wanted. No needed it for himself. Unlike Grievous, his nanosuit will not be as complicated to introduce into himself. It is time to go under the knife. And with those closing thoughts, Anakin drifts off into a semi-unconscious state as he works on his surgery through a droid. Chapter 32. V.1, C.32 Progress I. Coruscant. A humanoid figure is seen standing face to face with a droid. The droid has a saber ignited ready to strike its opponent, who is covered head to toe in a suit made out of weird materials and fibers with black coloring. The being's face is masked behind a helmet that is also colored black. Any other color of the suit glows with a purple light. Purple is cool after all. The actor Samuel L. Jackson sure had it right. Anakin dodges as the droid goes in for the kill and with extreme ease and skill smashes down with full force. Anakin, suited within his armor, has it currently set to armor mode as its default, not needing any other module. Igniting his own training saber, Anakin launches into an attack, drawing from the negative emotions to empower his lightsaber form. Practice makes perfect, and having a training partner helps me evolve beyond simple theoretical study and untested with no experience with the form. Anakin had more plans than to just create his very own nanosuit. He had also wanted to create his very own Vader-based suit as well, but instead a direct copy, he would take inspiration from what made the outfit so intimidating. At first the nanosuit he had created was made so he had to keep it on all the times, while he did everything. It took a while before the nanosuit achieved symbiosis, meaning it has now merged into his very physical being. He not only infused the suit with a non-organic form of midi-chlorians like he had done to the living droids and Grievous, he had also combined it with a blue stone that allows people a limited amount of access to Force abilities. The reason this was done was to further increase his connection to the suit, where it was fully spiritually connected, so when symbiosis was fully achieved it would be connected to him at not only a physical and mental level but also to his soul. This would make it possible for him to use Force abilities that would require him to take of the suit if he wasn't connected to it. The combat droid continuously swings at Anakin, who is within his nanosuit, but keeps on dodging and weaving through the very fast strikes. Sometimes Anakin would deflect while in a defensive posture to refine his control of his body. He usually restricted his Force abilities when fighting against this training droid he created, as he would win too fast. Purely refining his physical state of being and the skills of lightsaber dueling makes sure he would never be dull in combat situations. In fact, the droid had been upgrading throughout the year to adjust its settings to make it capable of keeping up with him. especially when he had merged with the nanosuit. Why don't we kick this up a notch? Anakin says out loud as more droids enter the training room from out of nowhere. Some have training sabers of their own while others have been programmed to fire some training blasters at him while he takes on the entire group of droids. Still, even this is not enough for the droids to even manage to land a hit on him. No saber or blaster shot can hit him, most of the swings of sabers being reflected while the shots being narrowly dodged or avoided altogether. The training he has been put through was definitely of higher standards, and if his masters, Kagan and Mace, did not push him hard, then he would have done so himself. He knows for sure that if he did not have someone who had experience help him learn the Force, without them it would take a long time to get to the level he is currently at. After a while within the training room, Anakin had defeated all droids by disabling them. That was a good workout. During the same year the invasion of Naboo took place. A species that was very peculiar had arrived in the galaxy. The Yuuzhan Vong. Yuuzhan Vong, children of Yun Yuuzhan, also called the Chosen Race, known to the Chiss and Pharaohans as the Far Outsiders, and sometimes incorrectly abbreviated to Vong, were a nomadic extragalactic sentient species. A typical Yuuzhan Vong resembled a human in form, though they were taller and heavier than the average human and had less hair on their heads. The Yuuzhan Vong were religious zealots, who viewed mechanical technology as blasphemy. Their technological innovations were genetically engineered and purely organic. Anakin had decided that he may want to stay away from this species at least for in the short term, knowing that they would in the future cause great death throughout the galaxy. What was even more special about them was their unique, distinct lack of a presence within the Force. Considering they had come from outside the galaxy, it does make some sense as to why they would be like that. Master Skywalker, why have you called me? Grievous had answered the call he had sent to him. There is a very weird race of beings that have recently entered our part of the galaxy. Anakin says, then continues. Well, more like a species that could be taken as an enemy of our future, and the future of the droids. They have a distinct hate for technological advancements, and their technology is focused around biological and genetic materials. That is interesting. Some of the elite medical droids would be interested in studying this species. Grievous says. I would like to as well. Is there something specific you would like to be done? Yes and no. I want to see if there is a way I could possibly communicate with this species. It probably won't happen considering I have basically become, if only partially, a cyborg like yourself. Yes, you had done something similar to myself. The other mission you had sent me on was a success, and I appreciate that I get to do things other than help manage the droids. Grievous says with sincerity. It does get boring sometimes. Grievous had spent most of his time on Dathomir dealing with the droids and with the Night Sisters. Even though he had now become somewhat capable with utilizing his new abilities, that didn't mean he was completely able to face off against them by himself. I have gotten those bracers you wanted. There was this human woman that had come into the plan searching for the same thing you were going for. Yes, I know that others would go after it. She is a professor of sorts. Grievous begins to report. Known as Profex Reincarnated, a female human dark side adept, archaeologist and scholar, affiliated to the University of Sanbra. An interesting person indeed. You have sensed she is capable of using the Force. Yes. I have also captured her as she was about to start an entire war over that bracer artifact. Reincarnated was an expert in galactic history, archaeology, and the lore of several traditions of Force users, including the Jedi Order, the Sith, in addition to bygone organizations. Secretly, Reincarnated researched the Sith and traditions of the dark side to increase her own powers of the Force. While researching in the university records, Reincarnated discovered that a missing Sith treasure, the Bracers of Nagus, had been lost in a Sith starship which had crash-landed on the planet of Larator. The bracers could be used to increase the power of the dark side, and she coveted the relic. The bracers' capabilities are entirely useless to me. The reason I had sent you out on that mission was for you to use those bracers for yourself. Really? It will help you considering you have become much more affiliated with the dark side of the Force, so you can draw some power out of it. Anakin states. I suggest you don't use it for now though, as it will make you weaker against other dark side users. The Bracers of Nagus were Sith artifacts created by a Sith artisan known as Nagus. In a quest for revenge in a personal feud against the Jedi Order, Nagus desired an item that would interact with the dark side of the Force, increasing the power of the Darksider wielding it. This led him to create the elaborately adorned Bracers of Nagus, which increased the wielder's dark side power whenever such power was used against an adherent of the light side. However, if the target of an attack resorted to the dark side of the Force, the bracers would benefit the target rather than the wielder. Anakin continued. Can you help me fix this flaw? Yes. It won't be much effort to recreate another set of bracers with only the benefits. You do have to deal with the Night Sisters a lot. Great. Is there anything more you want to discuss, or you just want me to keep an eye out on those Yuuzhan Vong? The Yuuzhan Vong are dangerous, especially to Force-sensitive people who are overly reliant on the Force. I suggest that the droids be careful as well. Anakin continues. They would be absolutely hated and despised even if they're what could be considered living beings. Okay. Grievous signs off from the communication device after Anakin had given his leave. Within the grand city of Coruscant, a large figure could be seen stalking through some of the lower rungs of the glorious capital of the Republic. Clad in a deep black suit, armored with a black cape draped behind the figure, it moves through the shadier areas of Coruscant. The helmet is the signature helmet of the infamous Darth Vader, but in this current time frame the person within the suit was simply known as Vader. Anakin had been getting more and more free time, and he used this free time to his advantage. He had rebuilt Vader's original suit, but without the flaws and much more powerful. Much more connected to him. While his nanosuit had achieved full symbiosis, meaning you cannot see the suit in on itself anymore, and had become a part of his being, that did not mean he was going to stop there in empowering or protecting himself. There were also many other things he could do here on Coruscant, and that would be to start cleaning up the streets behind the mask and become some sort of mafia boss controlling everything from behind the scenes. Much like Palpatine, but he would be changing things for the better. A lot of shady stuff happened on Coruscant despite its clean look. It wasn't as perfect as it would like to display itself. In his more darker persona of Vader, he had built himself up as if he were a Mandalorian and made sure to not use any abilities related to the Force. It helps that he had also started helping out the Mandalorians as well. At least unofficially he had been accepted into their culture as Vader. It was not that hard to fool them into believing he had some descent from that group, and had wanted to be trained and reintroduced to their culture. Blasters attached to his hips as to help along any negotiations that take place. When Anakin means negotiations, he doesn't mean the same way Kagan goes with his. Slowly taking over the criminals of Coruscant and reforming them into better people was a slow process, but he had a few years to work with before things got very busy again. Anakin's breathing could be heard from behind the mask. You will surrender to me or suffer the consequences. Albeit it is not the same heavy breathing as the original, but just as intimidating nonetheless, as the local criminals had come to fear the synthesized voice. Yes, sir. I will transfer everything to you. The criminal some replied. Good, now let me see into your eyes. I will judge you for your sins, and if deemed unworthy of the living you shall die. Anakin moves towards the man, and plunges right into the man's mind with some regard to his mental safety. Arg. The man chokes as if he was being gripped around his neck, being brought closer to Anakin. I can erase some memories now, but it would be pretty hard doing it on proper Force-sensitive people. Anakin thinks, browsing the mind of the criminal. Nothing too outrageous, and his actions, though cannot be justified, at least has a reason to resort to petty crimes. A lot of the criminals were simply normal people forced into situations that were very unlucky. The man Anakin is holding was also another victim of the many failings of the Republic. I may be delaying the inevitable, but this gives me time to build up the outer rims and make them stable planets for people to live on. Good. You have been judged, and the weight of your sins will be multiplied, just so you remember the pain of those you tormented. What Anakin was doing was increasing the emotions of the man's guilt. The man slumps over unconscious. Looking towards the other, who had gotten on his knees, started to scream at the top of his lungs. No! Forgive me! Please, spare me my life. Vader walks towards him. This one seems like a person deserving of death. Let's look into his mind first. Anakin sees many things he dislikes, and unlike the other, this man took pleasure in very sick acts that Anakin finds disturbing. Not to be too put off, he looks no further before saying, so many victims. Feel their pain. A sharp pain is felt as Vader tears apart the other man's mind before making him relive the moments his victims had suffered. That should do it. I will come back to finish him off later if he manages to have enough willpower to survive the mental attack. He won't be doing anything else. Chapter 33. V.1, C.33 Progress 2. Kagan had been living a rather relaxed life after the events that happened on Naboo. With a brand new mechanical hand, he had to practice some more to get used to the new part of his body. He would be lying if he did not feel a little sorrowful about the loss, but he understands and has learnt with the Jedi Code in mind. This helped him calm his emotions, and when he thought about it, the prosthetic was actually quite well constructed. His second apprentice, Anakin, was quite talented after all when it came to anything to do with technology. Overall, he made quick progress within the Jedi, and it would not be long before either himself or Mace would take Anakin on his first mission. Today we will be learning about the differences between what is the living force compared to the cosmic force. Kagan was currently conducting a lesson with Anakin, passing on his knowledge to his talented student. The living force was one of two complementary aspects of the force, an all-encompassing and all-transcending energy field present in and generated by all living beings, connecting all of life which fed into the cosmic force and death. Thus, the life created the force, as the Force created life. Sentience, consciousness and thought could be added on to life. The acceptance of the concept of the living force was only taught by a very small minority, and only accepted by a few within the order. Qui-Gon had taught Obi-Wan the same things and ways just as he is teaching Anakin now. A sentient mindful of the living force let go of their conscious self and relied on their instincts, living in the present and feeling instead of thinking, thus becoming attuned to life around them and enacting the will of the cosmic force. You should be aware of the midi-chlorians I have told you about before, right, my young Padawan? Qui-Gon questions. Yes, Master. Midi-chlorians are intelligent microscopic lifeforms that lived symbiotically inside the cells of all living things. Anakin answers. Correct, but there is more to them. Qui-Gon then continues. When present in sufficient numbers, they could allow their host to detect the pervasive energy field known as the Force. Midi-chlorian counts were linked to potential in the Force, ranging from normal human levels of 2,500 per cell to the much higher levels of Jedi. At least this is as much as modern-day science can tell. The Jedi Order does use scouting equipment to test people. This is the very same test I had done to you on Tatooine long ago. Life is sustained by the midi-chlorians, which served as the biological vector between living beings and the will of the Force, and the greater quantity of which allowed a lifeform to have a greater connection to the Force to the extent of actively using the energy as a power. The living Force contained the duality of the light and the dark sides of the Force, the latter of which tempted Force users, who must reject it by being mindful of their emotions. This concept is not widely accepted within the Order if at all, so what I am teaching you is of my own opinion that I have cultivated over the years. Master, I have a question. If this is not taught across the Jedi, then why do you think this is the correct way of thinking when it comes to the Force? Well, that is from one of the journeys I had gone on to the supposed birthplace of midi-chlorians. This was about the time I was discovering the secrets to manifesting one's consciousness after death. Interesting. Would you tell me this story? Sure. Qui-Gon traveled to a planet strong with the Force, a world that legend said was the birthplace of life and the origin of midi-chlorians. He learned from 5 Force priestesses who had retained their consciousness after death. He learned that, when a living thing died, its life passed through the living force and into the cosmic force to become one with the Force. As the living force and cosmic force existed in tandem, it became possible for one to retain consciousness and physically manifest themselves after death. Jin was considered worthy of the knowledge of eternal life, and secretly began his training to unlock its mysteries fully. He also learned from a shaman of the wills that achieving eternal consciousness required absolute selflessness. So the only way to achieve life after death is to maintain that you become selfless to a fault? Yes and no. The meaning of selflessness itself is that a being would be more concerned with the needs and wishes of others than with one's own. That is nice and all, but how are you to help others if you are unwilling to help yourself first? You couldn't possibly everywhere at once, or be able to give yourself for safety and peace of every other being. While that may be true, I believe that all one needs to do is make sure you do more for others than what you do for yourself, as this is truly the way to spiritual immortality. Qui-Gon then continues with another story of something he had experienced when it comes to the Force. I had once told Master Yoda that being called a coward was not of great concern to me, but that being called a great warrior was. After a mission, I had been given a vision through the Force, and it had communicated to me a many great things. Qui-Gon then begins to share his experience. In his vision, his skin and Jedi robes covered in marks and was surrounded by red humanoid beings who grew out of dark tendrils. Though at least one of these beings tried to attack him as he fought, Jin quickly ignited his lightsaber and cut the beings down, only for the red coloration to vanish from those he had killed. Jin saw he had murdered Jedi, and the same darkness that he had seen on their bodies began to consume him. By choosing violence, the dark side had gained power over him. As the darkness wrapped across his face, Jin awoke from his vision horrified, only to see the light side had entered into the monument. He realized the Force had taught him he could find balance that could be achieved without conflict, as unchecked violence would make the Jedi turn into what they sought to confront. In fact, he found that some of the planet's dark corruption had instead formed into flowers, existing in harmony with the light. And that, my young apprentice, is why I believe that undue violence is unnecessary in a lot of situations. That is why being called a great warrior disturbs me so much. Captured by a bunch of droids. How stupid. Professor Rennala, sometimes known as Profex Rennala, was the current captive of Anakin and Grievous and had basically been kept for a few weeks now. The only reason they had done so was to see the reaction if anyone would come looking for her. Let me out of here, you cyborg scum. Rennala called out towards the dimly lit hallways. Laughing, the voice of Grievous could be heard as he approaches. Why, look what he have here. Grievous continues before she can speak some more. Unfortunately for you, no one has even come to look for you. It seems that you are not that well known, or there are not a lot of people that care for you. To their surprise, it seems that not a lot of people cared for her, but that is what someone too deep in the dark side of the Force can do. Practicing the dark arts without due diligence can lead to a lot of negative consequences, and sometimes those who are in too deep can neglect others around them. One could push those closest to them away from themselves unintentionally. You are quite lucky that the Master has plans in store for you. Master? So you're not even the leader of the faction this is. If you are trying to get under my skin, it is not working. See where your ambition has gotten you? You should be humbled that the Master has deemed you of any worth at all. Grievous had started to accept that Anakin may very well be much more than a mere human. Even more so, his capabilities to be able to control all of these droids and to even create life to such an extent was amazing. Once Grievous had gotten used to his new form, he had practiced a lot to increase his power within the Force, and, though limited, he could tell the vast difference between himself and Anakin. He will be arriving soon to discuss with you the direction of your future. Grievous turned and left after speaking to the professor. Hey! Wait! Come back here! Her shouts could be heard echoing within the facility she had been trapped in, with the cold, unliving droids patrolling and guarding her from escape. Reincarnated was a very vicious woman, quite cruel as well in her disregard for life. Her ambitions would have originally put a lot of lives at danger. She hired 24 Klatooinian soldiers and went to Larator in her bulk freighter, with her 2 PTR-3 Vedette snub fighters in tow. On arrival, Reincarnated found the Sith starship half buried in the local mountain range known as the Bleaks. She quickly organized a dig site using prefabricated buildings. Noticing 2 main groups in the planet, the human settlers who farmed the inland prairies and the native Savaks living the coast, she decided to capture strong individuals from each group and use them as slave miners to uncover the ship. But her plans were thwarted before they could even truly begin. An entire droid army that was extremely powerful above the standards of what she knew had invaded and knocked out and disabled everyone and everything she had brought with her. Defenseless with only the limited Force knowledge and abilities at her disposal, she did not stand a chance. In a small twist of fate, if you would have it, her own Klatooinian soldiers she hired had easily betrayed her when the chance was given. I knew I shouldn't have trusted those lowly beings. Reincarnated saw those below her weaker than her, but she did not torture people for fun. She would have created slave camps though and had them against their will die for her in her search for the Sith artifact and treasure, the Bracers of Nagus. She had records of the immense power and potential it held when it came to users of the dark side of the Force. Even with her limited knowledge, she knew it would be immensely valuable to others, and not just herself. Heavy footsteps were heard coming from down the hallway, a presence within the Force that seemingly distorted the energy field present on Dathomir. Anakin had come in the guise of Vader to talk with Reincarnated. Who are you? Reincarnated said while starting to rapidly breath in and out at the being's very presence. What the hell is this monster? Her very instincts, both physical and within the Force, told her that her current opponent in front of her was much more powerful than her. The gap so large that she wouldn't stand a chance of survival if she were to try and go against him. Vader then speaks through the mask, keeping his face hidden, standing at 1.8 meters tall. Hello, Professor. Keeping it short and drawing out his words, Vader decides to intimidate the girl first so she is susceptible to his will. Ominously, Vader stands at a mighty 1.8 meters tall in height. This was a combination of his own physical growth and the suit he is wearing. I have come here to judge you. If your crimes are those that cannot be forgiven, you best say your prayers. Reincarnated gulps at that. If you have not done anything too serious, then you may be released. Vader states. Re-released. Reincarnated is confused. Playing some mind games, Vader decides to try and build some trust to lower her defenses. Yes, I have no more use for you after I have gotten what I wanted. You're simply too weak with abilities within the Force. Weak? Reincarnated doesn't want to be told of her insecurities. Yes, with little to no training from anyone, how did you think you were doing? Vader continued. Did you think you were all-powerful? All-knowing? Better than others around you? Yes. No. You are just like everyone else. A mortal who does not understand the nature of the dark side and its true potential. I have studied for years. I most certainly know a thing or two, especially about the history of Force-sensitive groups. Reincarnated let something slip, not knowing this is what Vader is looking for. You have information then? On the locations of potential places with Sith and Jedi temples abandoned. Of course I do. I am not a genius for nothing. How moronic. I have come to understand that stupid is not having a low level of intelligence. No, it is behavior that shows a lack of good sense or judgment. Vader then continues. Your intelligence may help you out in the college you are associated with, but here it means nothing. Reincarnated, being brought back to the reality of her situation, is once again reminded on the presence that towers over her, both physically and within the Force. I am willing to make a deal with you for your release. I want you to work for me, and in exchange I can give you much more of what you desire. Desire? You are ambitious, and when your ambition was left unchecked it has gotten you into trouble, but I believe we can temper your behavior to be more suitable for society at large. Tell me what you can do for me. Renala says, thinking she may be able to escape the clutches of Vader. Very well. Vader then thinks. Does this girl never learn? Chapter 34. V.1, C.34 Progress 3. Mace Windu was originally from the planet Harrowan Cal, where he was born into the Gauche Windu 42 years prior. Jedi anthropologists, who were studying the fact that all the Koronai could touch the Force, asked the Windu clan if they might take a child back to the Jedi order to regain the Koronai's connection to the Force. Padawan Skywalker, today we will start the lesson with your progress with Form 7. Yes, Master. Anakin replied. Begin. Since his parents had already died in the jungles, Windu was given to the Jedi when he was 6 standard months old. Having not been old enough for his naming day within the tribe, the Order bestowed upon him a name as he entered the academy. Like all in the Order, the young Corran boy was taught by Grand Master Yoda when he was a learner, and eventually went on to become a Padawan to another Jedi. At one point during his apprenticeship, Windu trained under Master Tra Saa. What truly surprised Windu when he had started to teach the boy known as Anakin was that his talent was extremely potent. So much so it surpassed all others he had seen, and at first that had scared him. With time he had settled down, but that did not mean it did not amaze him any less. Skywalker had gone so far as to even recreate his unusual ability to see shatterpoints in the Force, and how they would affect all of his future actions as well as the vulnerabilities of his opponents. With these unique abilities, he had glimpses of parts of his future, such as the lightsaber he would eventually build. No doubt Skywalker had been using these powers as well, probably to an even greater extent. What was truly weird about his new apprentice was that he could not properly see the boy's future, like he had none at all. Good, you are just about ready to move on to the next stage on your training, and may in fact receive your first mission. I do not know who you would go on this mission with, so you should be prepared. Thank you, Master. The two continued to clash their training sabers against each other. Even though we both are using the same form and he has only had a small amount of time compared to me to learn the form, it is amazing how fast he has progressed. As they continue to exchange blows, Windu start to lose some of his breath. This kid has got a lot of energy. I created Vapad to answer my weakness. It channels my own darkness into a weapon of the light. Mace then continues. And it seems that I have successfully taught you how to use this form. But be careful, Skywalker, I sense that you feel very strongly. It would be best if you didn't so easily become emboldened by your passion. Mace continues. It would be best if you tempered that passionate nature of yours. I have seen you have grown quite attached to things. Anakin then questions in a joking manner as he knows Windu is quite no nonsense. But Master, without possessions of anything how am I to survive? No clothing to give me warmth. No shelter to house me from the elements. What am I supposed to do? I think that is enough of that for today. Okay. There wasn't much more for Anakin to learn from Mace, and he is ready for a lot of things, and is in fact much more powerful than most Jedi Knights, and sometimes Mace can't help but feel that he may be more powerful than some of the Masters. But Master, don't those whom are Masters on the Council have a specialized precious hilt made out of electrum? Still deciding to be cheeky, Anakin continues where he left off. Yes, young Skywalker, there are many things that the Council gains, the electrum grip attachment being one of them. Mace sighs knowing that Anakin wouldn't change his ways. He has been quite the amusing student over the years, and had even the courage to ask him for his allowance to learn Form 7. Mace started to respect Anakin as he had the true makings of a Jedi, if not a little unorthodox. Mace sighs within his head. He has been influenced by Kagan in his stubbornness, but his playfulness should slowly start to recede once he experiences a real mission. Just remember, young Skywalker, that with great power comes great responsibility. A lot within the temple sees you in a prodigious light, and would like to see you rise to a position even greater than Master Yoda. People had seen Anakin's potential, and rumors had been starting to fly around as one of the teachers in the know about Anakin's midi-chlorian records let it slip he had great potential. Even more so, problems were created from this incident, leading to Anakin's would-be connection to the Jedi prophecy as the supposed chosen one. Before you head off, why don't you also inform me of your progress with the Shatterpoints? Sure, I can do that. For now I have learned how to see the Shatterpoints in situations, beings, and circumstances. Good, you have come a long way. Remember, these Shatterpoints revealed points upon which other things were reliant. Shatterpoints could form links between beings, creatures, planets, or other vessels, and if destroyed or utilized, these Shatterpoints could hold the key to averting disaster, sealing fate, winning battles, and fulfilling the very will of the Force itself. I will see you in another 2 days. Mace left with those finishing words, but whilst turning around and leaving the room he could hear Anakin call back to him. Master. Don't forget your promise. Mace just shakes his head as he leaves with a small amused tug of his lips pointing upwards whilst sighing within his mind. What have I gotten myself into? Coruscant. The midi-chlorian counter used by the Jedi, at least to Anakin, is outdated and is incapable of fully testing his true potential. The only readings on record was that his midi-chlorian count is above 20,000, but the approximate amount is still unknown. He knows the ritual should have enhanced it from what it was originally, and he would be able to use mathematics to reverse calculate his original count per cell. Getting his hands on the technology and the theory behind midi-chlorians was not that hard, especially after coming to the temple. There was a veritable treasure trove of knowledge in regards to the Force, of course skewered on to the light side of the Force. That is beside the point. The point is he had access to everything he needed to create his very own counter. To create one for himself simply because nothing could possibly detect his no matter their equipment. But Anakin didn't only want to create something for himself, he was curious about other things as well. He had captured one of the Yuuzhan Gong, and it was true when trying to sense them within the Force they are not present at all. Anakin was extremely powerful, especially when it came to mind and sense-based powers related to the Force. He had ideas to get around this disadvantage of only being human with powerful Force abilities, but what was truly fascinating was he wanted to test the Yuuzhan Vong he had captured. He wanted to discover whether or not they had any midi-chlorians at all. From what Anakin remembered about the history of the species, little was known about their early history. But the Yuuzhan Vong had apparently once lived as symbiotes with their homeworld and were Force-sensitive. Their technology was also largely organic. At some point in their history, the Yuuzhan Vong were caught in the midst of a devastating galactic conflict between two droid civilizations believed to be the Silentium and the Abominator, which solidified their hatred of mechanical technology and xenophobia towards other sentient lifeforms. Anakin had transferred the device he had created to Grievous, so he could get a blood test done to confirm whether or not they too also had access to the all-encompassing energy field of the Force. While he waited, he was currently tagging along with Barriss as she has yet again come to him for some help. Ani, what do you think? Have I progressed? Anakin looks at her handiwork. It seems good, but I believe you could use less energy and shorten the amount of time it takes to heal someone's wounds. Anakin had created a cut on his finger using a specialized knife, knowing that not a lot of weapons could hurt him anymore. Barriss definitely has talent when it comes to the healing arts. Barriss had become much more proficient in the various ways of the Force. Her potential in areas that include medicine are really good, and she has an interest within them as well. All Anakin had to do was point her in the right direction, and most of the time she had gotten to where she needed to be. Of course it helps when he has an even greater ability to predict the future. The many futures, that is with Mace's special power, he recreated for himself. Anakin, it would be soon that I get a chance to have a master of my own. Do you think I could do it? Do you believe I can get a master? That one would accept me? Anakin replies with a sure tone. I know for sure that you will become a Padawan. Many Jedi younglings don't manage to have a master accept them as their students. Even more are only capable enough to join the various Jedi Corps. And you will have a great master. I am sure of it. Anakin says with certainty. Well, at least you will have a master if everything goes the same as canon. I shouldn't have really changed all too much except accelerate her progress ahead of time. Have you been practicing your form and style with lightsaber combat much? Yes, I have. Thank you for letting me borrow your droids. It has really helped me. At this point Barriss continuously finds ways to be around me. I do not mind the affections from her, but currently she is still a child. Yet to be fully grown, and I have practically accelerated my own growth as well. It is good to know that she seems to be shy around the topic of emotions, as I have been slowly changing her mind about the ways of the Jedi. I mean, who would want to give up on a lot of their emotions? We are beings that practically thrive on our emotions. Especially Force-sensitive people, as out emotions can empower our abilities. Rather silly to just disregard it. I am glad that I was able to help. Anakin smiles at Barriss. I think you should get going back to your classes. Again, thank you for the help. No problem. Barriss left Anakin alone. I think it is time to meet back up with the Night Sisters and my allied corporation, Sinar Technologies' current CEO. I should also keep visiting Rennala. She seems to be coming along nicely, and I should really get to work on that gift I promised Grievous. I do like keeping my promises. What Anakin had been doing was a lot of research into what Force-based artifacts he may be able to start producing on his own. He has a few things that he has already created, like the specialized necklace meant to block a Force-sensitive person from being able to read your thoughts or emotions. He had given one to Padme as he couldn't trust the people around her to keep his secret safe. At least keep the things he told her safe, as he had gotten into a trade agreement with her. Anakin would not want the Sith Lord Sidious to get his hands on Padme, or on her thoughts, as it could let Palpatine in on some interesting information. Even though he had only acted like a genius, and that would surely raise some flags, but what was the biggest danger was if Palpatine realizes or connects the dots between himself and the ruining of his plans. He does not have to worry too much about others like Grievous or his droids whether living or not, as his mental protection extends to them via his connection to them. Mechidaru, or at least his version of it, doesn't only confer benefits to the user through control, he was able to confer benefits to the living droids as well. It even works for Grievous as his mind is protected through his Mechidaru control. He is after all a cyborg. Anakin has other plans as well. With there being no more reason to keep his mother on Tatooine, he could move her to another planet like Alderaan, as it is seemingly very peaceful. He is unsure if she would want to go and leave the place she had been living him. But Tatooine is going nowhere. At least Anakin doesn't believe it is anyway. Employees there can handle the operations well enough, and if they are understaffed, which would be an underestimation of how many people he had freed alongside his mother, then droids could fill in the blanks. They had been doing so for many years now. I think it is time I should visit her then, and set up a meeting up some leaders from the planet of Alderaan to be let in on the know that she should be respected greatly. The leaders of Alderaan had been notified of his more dark persona, Vader. He used this to help him leverage himself into getting his own mafia-like organization on the planet because he planned for his mother to go there to be safe. I mean, why wouldn't he want his own mother to be safe? Despite all the precautions he took, Anakin knows that Tatooine is in a very unstable political climate and strife is going to hit just around the corner. The slaves he had saved, the slaves that were runaways, were all getting impatient and wanted to take over Tatooine. He could trust a few of the people over there as he had also given them mind-blocking necklaces, but he doubts they are still ready. Well, soon. The slave rebellion will happen soon. I do have everything I need, so there is no point wasting time. Chapter 35. V.1, C.35 Slave Rebellion I. Tatooine. Kitster Shanchani Benai used to be a human slave boy on Tatooine, and the supposed best friend of Anakin Skywalker before he left for Coruscant to become a Jedi. After not seeing his smuggler father, Racker Benai, in many years, Kitster gave up hopes of being rescued from Tatooine and instead hoped to one day be a major domo for a wealthy Mos Espan estate. At least that was at first, but then he grew to admire Anakin greatly. So much so he began to imitate everything he did. From the way he talked to his walk. Everything. Kitster had of course heard of the slave resistance that was very underground. There were rumors that Skywalker Industries was working with the slaves. It was kind of an infamous thing that they helped slaves out, freeing them and all, but those were just rumors, at least on the surface. Kitster can say for sure that Skywalker Industries was helping the freed slaves, runaways, and other people break their chains. The person at the head of this group? Anakin himself. At that end, Kitster had joined as young as he could to make sure he could help out, as he has great emotional investment not only because of his deep admiration of Anakin, but also because the subject hit him hard. He didn't enjoy the life of a slave and was born into it just like Anakin was. Kitster had watched as the slave quarters, the district itself, had gone through a total renovation, upgrading the lifestyle of those who had decided to stay. A lot did decide to stay on Tatooine, if only to help the rest of the slaves here on Tatooine. Hey Skywalker's fan. Come over here, your help is needed. Most within the Resistance had taken to calling him a fan of Anakin. They weren't wrong, but he was both embarrassed and proud of this fact. That he had been widely regarded enough to be known as such is certainly something. Most people did use his actual name, but sometimes the adults just liked to tease him, just like all the other kids his age they had decided they wanted to help. A lot had taken inspiration from Anakin, while others were brought into this situation because of their circumstances. But one thing is for sure is that things are starting to heat up. Anakin would be coming back to Tatooine, and he was one of the only ones to know it among the other important higher-ups. So, Skywalker's coming here to Tatooine. Don't tell the others anything yet. It could cause a commotion. I think it is great he is coming back, he did say, and promised to continuously help us. Of course he would. He is our de facto leader. Many adults were talking about various things, specifically the people who had the largest roles to play in the upcoming uprising. Hey Kitster, you feel ready to see Anakin again? With the rate that he was growing, I wouldn't expect him to come back any less grown. One of Kitster's adult friends asked him. Well, yes. It would be interesting to see the changes he has gone through, but from what I understand is that he is going to come in a disguise. That is true, he said something about keeping his identity secret from the Republic. The woman continues. Remind me again, what was Anakin's code name? Vader. His code name is Vader. I believe he is also bringing over some droids to assist us in our takeover. Me too, but I can't really confirm that. Despite such good communications, the people here have only had limited training when it comes to military operations. Hopefully Skywalker is bringing those droids. The woman continues. They would help in the preservation of life. That is true. Looking back over to the table of important people, They start to continue their discussions with the plan. Look, does anyone know when Skywalker is coming? Shmi had informed people that her son was coming, and I don't think the boy would be cruel enough to tell his mother he is coming, and then not show up. Yes, of course that is true, but can we be sure that he is to stay with us till the end? Even though Anakin had done a lot, he can't help it if not everyone likes him. He could be for all intents and purposes just taking his mother away from the planet, then he would abandon us all here. Left to die or be recaptured as slaves. That is not true. Kitster decides to speak up in this moment. He had gone through a growth spurt of his own and is currently 13 years of age, giving him some height and having enough common sense to make logical judgments. Kitster may have been a slave and is now only a simple free child, but that didn't mean he was stupid, but it did mean he had very strong emotions to display to the group of adults arguing over what is to happen. One had gone so far to disparage his friend and slander his good name. Just thinking about the many things Anakin had done for him, Kitster should be mad. Very mad, in fact. Anakin is a good person. The best person, and in fact a much better person than you. The man that disdained the boy and had no respect for Anakin interjects. What's it to you, boy? What is a kid doing here at the adults' table anyway? Bob, calm down, it's just a kid. Calm down? Calm down. We are about to go to war with the Hutts, and you expect me to be lenient with a kid who has barely gotten off of his mother's milk. The man named Bob went a bit too far, as Kitster's mother had died while he was a young boy and in fact had died because of the slavers they were under at the time. Eyes going red. Kitster was enraged, and in a surprising quick dash, he manages to tackle the man to the ground with a surprising amount of strength. No one had noticed the flash of blue light that was emitted from Kitster's small necklace that hung around his neck. The necklaces that Anakin had gifted to many people did more than just protect their minds. And just like the blue stones that he had crafted them from, it could give a non-force sensitive individual the ability to use the force. These basic artifacts could in a moment of passion empower someone physically. Whoa there. Calm down, kid. No need to get violent with the man. We have all had it rough the past few days. Kitster, having claimed down, lets out a deep breath before saying, "Yeah, sorry about that. It was just the lack of disrespect, and to even go so far as to taint Anakin's name with his pathetic views. It really got to me. While I respect your guts, kid, you should always take in the situation, as there is near always a reason for someone's behavior. I guess. A few people have grown in discontent as they now live lives of luxury, and now that their peaceful times are coming to an end because of the upcoming war, people can get upset." The man that pulled Kitster off of Bob continued. "I know Anakin and his mother. Shmi has done a lot for us, as they are or were slaves themselves at one point, but sometimes people grow resentment for those who helped them." People within the background drag Bob off to get some treatment as the meeting resumes as normal, with no more heated tones but with cold calculations. Why is this so? Why can people not see that Anakin has given us much? I would go so far to say that he has given us a part of himself just to help us out. Kitster argues his point. Not everyone see it that way. In fact, the few that complain also look at Anakin as he were another slave master himself. That is ridiculous. Kitster exclaims out loud. "Quiet down, kid." The man says to calm Kitster back down. I know your point, but the reason for this is that Anakin and his mother also benefit from our labor by working for them. We are paid well enough, and are in fact given many choices to where we can leave the planet with a small sum of Republic credits to start up somewhere else. Kitster then continues. If not, and we choose to stay or go to one of the branches off of Tatooine, we are given good, no great accommodations. That doesn't matter to some. They would still try to find blame with Anakin. Not every slave is a good person themselves. Even if people don't deserve to suffer slavery, some slaves still deserve some punishment for what they have done or are willing to do. Well, Kitster hesitates as a topic had been brought up that hits close to home. That is true. My mother had died because another slave within our group had killed her off. No one cared. The life of a slave is hard, near impossible to live in any good conditions, and that is why I get it. Your anger over Anakin being called out as if he has done something wrong. After a while, the meeting had finished and everyone had gone in their separate directions, getting ready, preparing themselves, their family and friends. Everyone around each other is scared, for they do not know what is about to happen, what is about to come, and there is no telling if they would be successful. There is one thing on Kitster's mind though at this moment. Ani, where are you? Right, everything should be ready, and from all reports most of Tatooine has gone on a silent lockdown. Anakin had smuggled some droids onto Tatooine to prepare for his arrival. He doesn't know what situation could happen, and there is no telling if the Hutts had caught on to what was about to go down. It would be better to get my mother off planet first. Anakin had prepared everything for his mother to live a comfortable life, and in fact knew to include the people closest to her like Jira to come along with her. If she were to go to completely different surroundings with nobody, she knew Anakin would fear for her mental state. It's okay, she is a strong woman. She has been through a lot and would go through a whole lot more before I can really give her peace of mind. Grievous, you have gotten everything prepared. Anakin communicates to Grievous through his nanosuit that he had hooked up with a special network that allows him to communicate with any and everyone he is also connected. Yes, Master Skywalker. Great, now it is time for the two of us to meet up again in real life. I will be meeting you on Tatooine. I will be on my way, Grievous out. Anakin has some more things to do before he can meet up with everyone on Tatooine, and that includes getting permission from the Jedi Order to have a little trip off planet. Anakin would have to confront either of his masters, probably both into allowing him off planet for an extended amount of time. Of course he must try and redirect their attention somewhere else as to make sure they are distracted and deal with something else. He had set up something specifically for the Council to be on alert about, something that would put not only them but at the same time simultaneously Sidious as well. Even if the Jedi find out why he is going to Tatooine, they would not be able to connect the dots that he is Vader. But if Sidious finds out, he would want to investigate in depth what had happened. And this could go badly for him despite the preparations he had made in the event something like that was to happen. Anakin had sent not just any type of droid under his control to Tatooine. He had sent his elite droids, the living droids capable of using the Force as a front line to stall the inevitable while he makes his way over. If everything is going according to plan, he should be able to leave the temple unnoticed. If not, he has backup plans in store in case his absence is noted. Day cycle. Coruscant. Anakin had steadily made his way out of the Jedi Temple and had gotten a ship for himself to take him to Tatooine. Which ship? The one he had originally stole from Maul. I do not know the specifics of what happened to him. All I know is he has survived and didn't have his entire body cut in half. He is still probably mad, and his hate will fuel his power just as the dark side always does. Boarding the ship he now controls before anyone would notice his absence, he takes off into the atmosphere getting ready to use hyperspace. Let's set coordinates for Tatooine. Back within the temple, the Jedi were none the wiser about what was to happen or commence. Qui-Gon was having a relaxing day so far that he had some free time to catch up with his old apprentice, Obi-Wan. Hey, my not-so-young former apprentice. Master! Obi-Wan exclaimed, surprised at the visit from his master. It wasn't often he had gotten to see him. Obi-Wan had missions of his own to go on after the Jedi High Council had decided he could officially become a knight. I just thought I would check up on you. How you have been, what have you been doing, these types of things. Not much. Obi-Wan says, but Qui-Gon was expecting a different answer. Okay, maybe I have been doing a lot, but now I have the freedom to do things on my own to prove myself. You do not have to prove yourself to anyone, anymore, Obi-Wan. I know, I just feel like I had gotten the promotion simply because I did a mission I felt I barely did anything in. That is not true, and you know it. You succeeded where I failed. I would go so far as to say before Qui-Gon could finish, a disturbance could be felt throughout the temple. Well, I guess there is some trouble to get to. Chapter 36. V.1, C.36 Slave Rebellion 2. Set coordinates for Tatooine. Enter hyperspace. Anakin says out loud towards the ship. It activates its hyperdrives and zooms past the lots of other ships entering Coruscant. Anakin speeds towards Tatooine as fast as he can. Let the games begin. Opening up his mental connection to the droids on Coruscant meant to act as a distraction. He commands them to start the attack on the Jedi Temple. What Anakin is doing is ensuring that the Jedi are on the lookout for droids that have gone rogue. He wouldn't be doing anything dangerous, but he needed some type of distraction to take away from the fact he had left. He knows Qui-Gon and Mace would not be too worried about him, especially since he had shown the capabilities of the nanosuit that has achieved symbiosis with is capable of. It is able to resist a full-on blow from a lightsaber. Of course, the material used to have this effect is Beskar. The very rare material the Mandalorians are obsessed about. I would be too if I needed more of the stuff, but for now there is no need. Anakin had his Vader suit ready within the ship so he could change at any time, but when he arrives on Tatooine he would come as Anakin Skywalker, visiting his mother before leaving to Alderaan. Supposedly this will be the official story, but he will in actuality stay behind to help the slaves and the droids take over the planet. Grievous would be tagging along, as well as he has a desire to spill some blood. Sometimes the loss of life is necessary. I chose the lesser of two evils in this instance. One droid in particular, he did not include in the fight against the Hutts, was his very first living droid, -47 Hong Kong dollars, because its task was to protect his mother, and protect his mother it would. For all intents and purposes, -47 Hong Kong dollars had grown attached to the woman and started to see her as its grandmother. A little jarring to Anakin, but he guessed it made sense considering HK thinks itself his child. It isn't really wrong to think like that either. He had created HK so he would take on that mantle and hope to become a good figure for HK to follow his footsteps in. Anakin hoped to do that with his future biological children as well. Anakin didn't plan for the uprising to be a long siege. He had planned for it to be over rather quickly. That is if everything goes to plan. Opening up his communications device, Anakin calls Grievous. Master? You called? Yes. I was wondering if you had made it to Tatooine yet. Yes, the locals have a bit of an eye problem, but other than that everything has been going to plan. There has been some movement though from the Hutts. That's not a good sign. Tell me exactly what they are doing. For now they have just bolstered up their forces. It is steadily increasing though, and I fear we may need to bring in more droids to handle the situation. The elite are pretty good, but I don't think they would be capable of making it to Jabba the Hutt. That is a good point. For now we will monitor the situation, and if it gets any worse I will have to call in for some backup when the situation worsens. Has there been any other movements? Not really. I haven't made my way over to the district your mother lives in and gone to the Slave Rebellion's main headquarters here, so I am unsure on their end other than the sparse communications given the day prior. Right, you best be on your way then, and make sure not to cause too much trouble and draw unnecessary attention to yourself. You got it. Grievous cyborg laughter could be heard before the call was cut. Mentally sighing, Anakin thinks to himself. Grievous will get me in trouble one of these days. I just hope it is not today. Exiting hyperspace, Anakin within Maul's stolen, he means commandeered, ship arrives just outside of the Tatooine system. I am surprised that they have not started monitoring space yet if they have caught on, or it is that they believe they are safe to stay thinking I did not come prepared. That could be their downfall. Landing once again on the sandy desolate planet of Tatooine, Anakin thinks to himself in this moment. Home sweet home. Then continues. I think it is time to surprise my mother, but before that get someone to transport my Vader suit elsewhere before I leave with my mother to Alderaan. Walking around the streets of Mos Espa, Anakin reminisces about his time here on Tatooine, as it had felt so long ago he had come to this planet. Nostalgia. Ain't it great? Delving into the Force, Anakin starts to send out a pulse through the Force to locate where his mother may be. In the store. Of course. Smiling, Anakin heads to the direction of the storefront. Skywalker Technologies. Entering, he could hear his mother's voice call out from the counter. Anakin looks over to see she has her head done concentrated on something. Probably one of her projects meant to help others. Welcome to Skywalker Technologies. How can I dash? Shmi pauses as she looks up with surprise clearly seen on her face. Anakin. My Ani, you have come. Excited, she drops what she is doing and rushes over to her child, whom now towers over her at a staggering 1.8 meters tall, and his physical growth is yet to stop. Anakin opens his arms wide knowing she is rushing him with the intent to hug him. She wraps her arms around him and Anakin can't help but get a little emotional. Damn, I have been hit by the feels. Hello, mother. I am back. His mother starts to spitfire question at him, one after the other with no time to consider her own breath. So much to say and talk about, but so little time to do so. Yes. Calm down, mother. I have something to tell you. What is it, Ani? You have to leave Tatooine for a little while, and I have set up a place on Alderaan for you and Jira to move into. Obviously, Shmi knows more about the Slave Rebellion than she lets on. Is that why I have come? To fight with the others? How do you know that? Now look here, I may not be as smart as you, but I can do some investigating on my own. I guess I shouldn't have underestimated the extent to which she knows of my shenanigans. Mothers sure are scary. It is true, I am to be the face of the uprising here. To lead them to freedom. It's dangerous, I can't allow it. Within the Republic you are safe, but out here anything could happen. And that is why I am insisting that you go with Jira to Alderaan. By now the two are not hugging anymore and simply a few centimeters apart from each other. But Anakin dashed. I am sorry, mother, for interrupting you, but for your safety, I think that I will have to forcefully remove you from Tatooine. Anakin states as Shmi looks confused. C-3PO, come out and escort my mother to the ship and get her to Alderaan. Yes, master. I can most certainly help you out with this. And I assume I will be needing to get Lady Jira as well. Correct, I assume you know the way. I am the protocol droid my master has made. C-3PO responds in a snarky tone. Okay. Get on with it then. Before Anakin forgets, he also mentally tells -47 Hong Kong dollars to be on the ship along with C-3PO and Jira. I am sorry, mother. Just know that I love you and that everything will be alright. You just have to trust in me. Shmi stares into her son's eyes looking for something, but in her heart she knows he will be fine just as he was all those years ago, going off who knows where. She had accepted that her child could make his own decisions at that point, even if she did not like it. Fine. I will go. Just promise me you won't get hurt. I promise. Anakin replies. Shmi leaves along with C-3PO with reluctance, and before she goes she also says, I love you as well. Now that everything had been taken care of, he needs to make his way to the slave resistance headquarters, hidden away within the former slave district, turned Skywalker district. That is right, the district that used to be called the slave district is now called by Anakin's last name in memory of his actions, what he represents, and in the fact he owns the land. Back with the Jedi on Coruscant, they are currently experiencing a disturbance to their day-to-day normal lives. A lot of people are rushing back and forth through the hallways of the Grand Jedi Temple. Younglings, Padawans, knights, and all sorts were moving around, going to areas that were either safe or heading in the direction of the trouble. Well, I guess there is some trouble to get to. Obi-Wan says where he left off last. What are we waiting for? Let's go. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan start dashing through the hallways, infusing themselves with the Force to accelerate their approach towards the trouble. Why would anyone be brave enough to attack the temple? Obi-Wan questions out loud. That is not the questions you should be asking. It is how is good enough to get past many of the security measures put in place to cause this trouble in the first place. Qui-Gon says. Coming across several people, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan happen to chance upon a scene where Jedi Master Mace Windu had cut down a droid. Master Windu, what is going on here? Qui-Gon questions. Well, from what I can tell, some droids have started to attack throughout the temple in many different areas. People have been dispatched or been sent to areas that are considered safe. Droids? Rogue droids here. Obi-Wan continues. Why would droids attack here? They must have someone commanding them. That is the thing, we can't seem to trace the signal even though we have the home base advantage here. Windu replies. Have you already tried to establish why the attack is happening? No one would attack the Jedi without a reason. I don't know, but I fear that this could be connected to the mysterious warrior you two faced on Naboo. We weren't able to uncover the identity of the person who attacked other than it was a Sith. Windu continues. We just didn't know which one, whether that be the master you two had taken care of or the apprentice. They always come in twos. Qui-Gon states. True, now we need to make sure to take care of all the droids. In fact, the situation right now cannot be considered dire, as for some reason the droids are not aiming to kill anyone. There has been no deaths? Yes, only minor injuries to adults mostly, while the younglings were left alone. That is interesting. Oniwan says. Yes, but for now we got no time to waste, we should get to other areas. Mace leads the group. The now 3 Jedi run through the Jedi Temple, going to multiple locations, but the droids never end. If they are dispatched to one location and take care of them, they are then sent to another. Well, this is not a fun experience. Obi-Wan thought to himself. They have no end, surely by now we should have cut down their number for now. Maybe, but whoever is behind this attack doesn't seek to truly hurt anyone and could very well be a distraction. Mace says. Qui-Gon then questions. A distraction it may be, but for what? Obi-Wan strikes down another droid and he has started to get annoyed by this point. Everyone is safe, it just seems like these things don't pose a threat at all. That is the thing, Obi-Wan, we don't know where the real threat could come from, so taking care of all the droids is our only option at this moment. Within another area of the temple, a youngling was thinking of her friend. Ani, where are you? Barriss had been evacuated along with the rest of the other younglings, separated into their clan areas, being kept safe by Jedi who had been keeping guard over them. Hello. It was at this moment Barriss notices a little girl talk to her. Why hello. Bending down, she gets a closer look at her. My name is Ahsoka Tano. Who are you? The inquisitive little Togruta asks Barriss. Deciding to entertain the girl and keep her mind off of things humors her. Well, my name is Barriss. Barriss Afi. Will you be my friend? Friend? Sure, I can be your friend. As Barriss replies, Ahsoka's face lights up at her declaration. Are you a Padawan? You seem powerful. Not yet, I am not. I have yet to take the trials and gain the recognition of a master. I am hoping to have one though. Really? But you already have a master, do you not? No? What are you talking about? That other boy, his name is... The name stuck on her tongue. Ahsoka tries to remember. Are you talking about Anakin? Yes, doesn't he teach you? Well, that may be true, but he is not my master simply because he helps me out. Her mind switching fast, Ahsoka then asks another question. Can Anakin be my friend too? I am sure he wouldn't mind being friends with you. Cool. He is cool. Ahsoka exclaims in childlike excitement while Barriss thinks to herself. Great, another fan of Anakin's. Chapter 37. V.1, C.37 Slave Rebellion 3. Grievous had landed on the home planet of his master and was walking through the streets of Mos Espa trying to be as low profile as possible. But considering his height, stature and cyborg looks in general, that was pretty hard to do on a planet like this where there are hardly any other people who were somewhat like him. He could hear some whispers coming from some people. Grievous could also see various species native to Tatooine scuttering around. If I remember correctly, those are the Jawas, and the others are referred to as Tusken Raiders. These creatures would come in handy when locking down on the Hutts and in fact played a large role in Anakin's information network here on Tatooine. Who would care for unimposing creatures such as them? Especially the Jawa, with them having set up shop on some of Anakin's territories, allowing him to the ins and outs of the criminals here. A lot of the time he is able to get pretty benign information, but sometimes it helps. With a rebellion about to start, they would be key as he had them infiltrate Jabba's palace. Jabba was immensely satisfied with their jester-like nature. Grievous comes into the now-named Skywalker district, as sees the people that were a part of the public company known as Skywalker Industries. Many faces that had once been impoverished. Many people whom had a chip implanted inside their body now removed. Their chains removed. Free people. Free beings that can live their lives any way they wanted. Grievous had come to appreciate freedom and liberty himself, as he had seen the atrocities committed. And some he had done himself. Skywalker really does good. Spending all that time on Dathomir must have made my perspective on life quite bleak. Grievous spent most of his time on Dathomir around the dark side and its energy. It does slowly warp one's sense of being, but one does not truly lose themselves to the dark side. It is just that another part of them comes out from the embrace, and Grievous was a wiser man than he once was before. Coming to another planet like Tatooine that is seeped in a large amount of dark side energy because of the residual hate, anger and desperation of the people that lives here certainly makes itself known. Being force-sensitive does have its UPS, but Grievous had also come to learn the negatives as well. In general, the areas where Skywalker's touch has influenced, there is a sort of balance. This balance is something forming a bond between the light and the dark, as if one could not be separated without the other. Anakin had once told him some wise words of his own. The code of the Jedi is flawed, but that does not mean the Sith code is any better as well. Both will lead to the extremes of either side, and I believe there is a balance to be struck between the two. There is both chaos and harmony. Both peace and war, because within chaos there is order, and within order there is chaos. Anakin then continued. For every action there is an equal reaction. It is simple laws of physics, whether they be applied to the physical world or otherwise be applied to the mind or the spirit. Everything has some connection despite the total randomness of everything. What Anakin had said to him had struck an accord, as many things that had happened and can happen has consequences. His own actions have led him to this point, but so has the actions of others indirectly moved him. Truly, I have become enlightened. I may just start calling myself a Jedi now. Grievous has now come across the secret entrance to enter the base. He enters the special code by first knocking on the door. Yes. Someone answers from the other side. With his gruff voice aided by the systems to vocalize his voice, Grievous replies. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck, if a woodchuck could chuck wood? As much wood as a woodchuck could chuck, if a woodchuck could chuck wood. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. The voice from the other side answers back. Grievous sighs within his mind before continuing with the silly code sequence. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Where's the peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? Good. The voice goes quiet for a bit before the door opens, where the person from behind the door reveals themselves. A female Twi'lek who seemed to be around 15 years of age started to gesture towards Grievous. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and come in. The name's Trellebear, by the way. Right, if you would excuse me. Grievous had learnt and adapted, so he had proper manners. Walking in, Grievous was then guided down to the basement of the house, but where they were really going was the true entrance to the underground facilities that has housed the Resistance. Trella asks Grievous because he was mostly silent and did not reply to her. So, what is your name? Just call me Grievous. Grievous, huh? Okay, sure, I can do that. So are you here to help out? I haven't seen you around here before. Yes, you could say I have come to Tatooine to help with the rebellion. Trella raises her eyebrows. So you're an outlander then? You could say that. Know anyone around these parts? Not really. I only know of a couple of people, and it is mainly because of them that I am here. That is fine, as long as you're willing to help out. Trella smiles before saying. I am needed elsewhere right now, but you can interact with anyone here and see what you could do to help. Grievous pauses before saying in an unsure tone. Sure. Bye-bye, I got to go back and man the door. Wouldn't want anyone else not affiliated with us to get in. Grievous looks around contemplating his situation. What am I to do now? Back with Anakin, he had gone back to the Skywalker residence within the Skywalker district, going unnoticed because of the invisibility feature that came from his nanosuit. Looking around the home he had helped to build, he becomes nostalgic once again. Truly. I guess I had missed this place. Anakin enters making no sound whatsoever and begins to move towards the package left behind. A large crate had been placed within Anakin's childhood home. It is time to become Vader. Using the Force to open the crate from the outside, what is revealed is the infamous dark black suit of Vader. Anakin connects with his droids on Coruscant, creating a distraction for him, and decides he may want to troll a certain individual. It would not pose much risk to try something against Palpatine. Seeing through the visual perception of the droid, Anakin could see that the temple had been evacuated to the innermost safest areas. There were hardly anyone present, and through the sound-based perceptors on the droid, he could just hear off into the distance the firing of blasters and the hum of a lightsaber. I guess they have started to respond properly to the attack. Maybe this would serve as some sort of wake-up call, but I doubt it, as not even the incident with Geonosis had changed the Jedi. Simultaneously, Anakin puts on his suit as he becomes a spectator of what is happening in the temple. Hopefully I have not caused much distress. I only need a distraction. As Anakin is putting on Vader's mask and helmet, multiple figures rush over from another direction. Are those? Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan and Mace had come into his view, allowing him to see that they had not been roughed up but were disheveled and heavily breathing due to exhaustion. Master Qui-Gon, Master Windu. There are some droids over there. Obi-Wan calls out. I got this. Mace ignites his saber into action and dashes across the room towards the droid Anakin is in control of. Deciding to test his skills out on the 3 Jedi, Anakin controls the droid to move away from the attack. Mace misses and confusion could be seen across his face. What? How did you do that? Getting old now, Master Windu? Mace harumphs, then states. Not that old, but this droid in particular is weird. I think we should destroy it together, Knight Qui-Gon. Obi-Wan, you shall take care of the rest of the droids, then join us. On it. Obi-Wan dashes towards the other droids within the area. Okay. Qui-Gon and Mace jump into action, swinging their sabers in the hopes of destroying the droid Anakin is in control of. This is my chance to distract the Supreme Chancellor as well. Anakin enhances the droid from all the way over on Tatooine to increase its capabilities, but most importantly its speed. Quick, get after it. Qui-Gon yells out and starts to chase along with Mace behind him. The special droid Qui-Gon and Mace chase after starts to gain ground as it is running towards the exit of the Jedi Temple, and the same thought passes through their minds. What the hell is this thing? Anakin, controlling the droid, decides to see if he can make it to where the Chancellor may be to give him a surprise and take his attention from whatever he is doing to the current predicament. By now he should have noticed or been informed about what is happening within the temple. This should be interesting. Anakin, now within his Vader persona, begins to cloud his presence, and to chance the essence of his aura, making it much darker in alignment with the dark side. His pure blue eyes have now turned the deep glowing yellow eyes that give off negative emotions. This is never that fun to do. Anakin has been experimenting with Force alignment and has been switching back and forth between the two. As Anakin, he represents the light side of the Force, while as Vader he has the passion of the dark side seeping through his being. Master Qui-Gon, Master Windu. There are some droids over there. Obi-Wan calls out. I got this. Mace ignites his saber into action and dashes across the room towards the droid Anakin is in control of. Deciding to test his skills out on the 3 Jedi, Anakin controls the droid to move away from the attack. Mace misses and confusion could be seen across his face. What? How did you do that? Getting old now, Master Windu? Mace harumphs, then states. Not that old, but this droid in particular is weird. I think we should destroy it together, Knight Qui-Gon. Obi-Wan, you shall take care of the rest of the droids, then join us. On it. Obi-Wan dashes towards the other droids within the area. Okay. Qui-Gon and Mace jump into action, swinging their sabers in the hopes of destroying the droid Anakin is in control of. This is my chance to distract the Supreme Chancellor as well. Anakin enhances the droid from all the way over on Tatooine to increase its capabilities, but most importantly its speed. Quick, get after it. Qui-Gon yells out and starts to chase along with Mace behind him. The special droid Qui-Gon and Mace chase after starts to gain ground as it is running towards the exit of the Jedi Temple, and the same thought passes through their minds. What the hell is this thing? Anakin, controlling the droid, decides to see if he can make it to where the Chancellor may be to give him a surprise and take his attention from whatever he is doing to the current predicament. By now he should have noticed or been informed about what is happening within the temple. This should be interesting. Anakin, now within his Vader persona, begins to cloud his presence, and to chance the essence of his aura, making it much darker in alignment with the dark side. His pure blue eyes have now turned the deep glowing yellow eyes that give off negative emotions. This is never that fun to do. Anakin has been experimenting with Force alignment and has been switching back and forth between the two. As Anakin, he represents the light side of the Force, while as Vader he has the passion of the dark side seeping through his being. Quickly it is moving towards the Senate building. Mace calls out from behind Kagan. Anakin continuously has his mind at two places at once and can split his consciousness within multiple directions. Would be unhindered and can still work at full capacity as his mind-based force training has paid off the more time passes. With the droid, Anakin moves its mechanical parts as fast as he can, zooming towards where he can somewhat sense Sidious's force presence. Calling Group 2 of droids on Coruscant, now is the time to make your way towards Sidious. Anakin mentally calls out and activates the other droids in place. What the dash? Mace stops himself from saying more. There is more of them. Where do they keep coming from? And why are they headed towards the Senate building? Is it an attempt at causing chaos? Kagan says just out of the droid Anakin is controlling hearing range. I thought we had established the reason already. Mace then continues. It is meant to work as a distraction, but for who or what, I do not know. At least that is what I believe now. Maybe we shouldn't be following this droid around. It sure beats doing nothing, as this droid is the only one acting differently. That is true, let's continue. Kagan then says out loud so the droid's hearing sensors can pick up what he is saying. Whoever is controlling the droids, I suggest you stop what you are doing and peacefully hand yourself over. The droid's mechanical synthesized voice is heard. Peace was never an option. So be it. Mace says as he speeds up, trying to get the droid. Back on Tatooine, Anakin has become fully suited within and is now making his way to the Uprising hideout. This time he is not invisible but tries to discreetly exit the Skywalker residence without being seen. Despite the heavy suit weighing him down, Anakin is easily able to maneuver himself within it. After getting to a safe distance to finally reveal himself, he starts to walk the street of Mos Espa as the suns of Tatooine are finally setting and nighttime rolls around. His humongous frame causes a lot of people still out and about step away from him. His very presence scaring those closest with an invisible barrier no one wishes to cross into. To overcome evil, sometimes you must become evil yourself. Fortunately, the only people out at night time were either children living off of the streets looking to make a quick buck or criminal scum doing the same, but are willing to do things that are much more worse. Move. A simple statement is said from behind the mask Anakin speaks through, and it scares the person who had been brave enough to approach him. You think you fool me, don't you? All big and tough hiding behind that armor of yours. I bet you can't even take a hit. Deciding to give a last warning before making his way, Anakin states again while increasing the pressure he exerts on the drunken man. Move, or you will be dealt with. The breathing behind Anakin's mask starts to terrify the man as he feels that somehow he is heavier. Before much else can happen though, someone makes their way towards him. What is this? I am sorry, sir, but my father has had too much to drink for the night. Please forgive him. A young lad comes out to aid his drunken father. He should lay off the drinks, he could hurt someone. Pausing for dramatic effect, Vader then continues. Or he could be hurt himself. The young lad gulps. Yes, sir, I will keep that in mind and will make sure my father does too. With a flick of his wrist, Anakin decides to make his exit more dramatic by controlling his cape to billow with the wind. Chapter 38. V.1, C.38 Slave Rebellion 4. Vader had entered then secret underground base with no one to stop his descent. Making sure that he keeps his presence subdued and not outright scare the people below. Looking around, Vader tries to see if he could find Grievous, knowing he had arrived ahead of him. After a few minutes of looking around, while no one really questioned his being here as they were all busy doing something else, Vader managed to find Grievous. Funnily enough, he had been entertaining some small children whose parents had left them stay within the safest area of the base. Stop that! Grievous declares while being dog-piled by the children who were laughing and having a good time whilst their surroundings were chaotic. Let's see here. Delving into the Force, Anakin starts to locate the more important people to his plan, if they are present or not within the underground base. Most of everyone is here. That is good. Now it is time to make my grand appearance. Anakin had become the founder of the Resistance all those years ago, and helped keep the funding for them alive with all sorts of other things to help them passively and defensively while he built up an attack force capable of taking on the entirety of the Hutts. Today he had come as Vader, the supposed mysterious co-creator of the Slave Rebellion. All those years ago he had created a plan to further disguise himself so that the Jedi would not investigate this rebellion much. They may question his involvement, but he could play it off as him being compassionate for his fellow slaves and former slaves. With Vader he would just say this persona was the person whom had helped his mother and himself to free themselves from slavery. A quote-unquote mysterious figure who was very powerful. The Jedi may want to investigate this person given he would have an entire force, an entire army of droids at his disposal, but anything they investigate would lead to dead ends. The same would happen if Palpatine tried to investigate as well. Grievous. Vader says. Startled, Grievous jumps from his annoyed state to battle ready within an instant, which also startles the children. Who? Calm down. Grievous. It is I, Vader. On cue, Grievous looks at the disguised Anakin and lowers his guard. Right. Sorry about that. You had startled me. Now that I am here, I have something to tell everyone about what is to happen. How we are to free the slaves here on Tatooine, and how we are to get Jabba to hand over his rights as ruler of this planet to us. Vader's modulated voice doesn't outright terrify the children, but they do seem intimidated. I believe we should take this conversation elsewhere. Vader looks around at the small children. Come Grievous, we start tonight. Everyone had been gathered around, the most important to the least within the upcoming battle. Vader stood at the forefront with Grievous by his side. Here, as you can see, is the special device that was created for the sole purpose of disabling any and all enslavement-based equipment throughout Tatooine. Vader presence unnerves quite a few individuals. Specifically, it would target everyone within every settlement here on Tatooine. All slaves with an implanted chip will not have to worry about their escape, as they would live and not be blown to bits and pieces. Vader continues. Sir, I have a question. Someone speaks up from the crowd. You may ask. Where is Anakin? Did he not say he was to come? There was a mistake in the communications. Anakin Skywalker was only to come here to pick up his mother and do a few more other things before leaving for Alderaan. Some are confused but accept the answer while someone stands up enraged. No. I refuse to believe that. It was none other than Bob, the man that had been beaten down by Kit's Tur earlier. Injured, angry and frustrated due to a factor of situations, but the man in a bad place and he acts out on his anger. Skywalker said he would help us. Be here with us when we went to war. Bob then continues. Where is our savior now? Deciding to further cover his own tracks, Vader redirects the man's outrage by stating something that would blow their minds, even if it was a half-truth. I am the one who saved Anakin and Shmi Skywalker all those years ago. The room goes silent at that declaration. That is right. All those years ago it was me that had decided to intervene, believing that enough was enough. Vader then continues. For a long time the people had suffered here on Tatooine, and I saw to it that I should make a change. Far too long had I sit back and did nothing when I had the power to change something. The day has come, and that day is today. The crowd resonates with his statements and begin to nod their heads along with him. Vader continues his speech. Anakin Skywalker is an intelligent boy capable of many things, but he was just a child and still is. For many of you here to put the burden of a resistance, the burden of hundreds of thousands, no millions to billions of people on him is wrong. You all now must stand up and reclaim your freedom. Even Grievous had been affected by Vader's words, not knowing the power of persuasion Anakin had cultivated over the years. Tonight, I will go in with my droids to confront the Hutts, and in doing so will declare that this criminal empire will be no more and another shall rise in its place. Far greater than any other, allowing all people, all races protection, a stable economy, and above all else your freedom. This will be a day long remembered. It will see the end of slavery here on Tatooine. It will soon see the end to the restriction of your freedom and those all over the galaxy. At the epitome of his speech, Vader finishes. If you do not see the benefits to regaining your freedom and only see yourselves helpless in the situation to come, I will be here. The crowd erupts into a chant of his name, and within the chaos Grievous manages to say something to Vader. Are you sure everything is going to go all right? Vader, using one of his signature catchphrases, replies. I find your lack of faith disturbing. Out on the dune seas of Tatooine. At the gates of Jabba's palace, a figure clad in deep and dark black armor within the dark night makes its way towards the palace. Beside this figure, many droids could be seen walking around it, surrounding it like a shield as the group advances to the palace. The black figure within its suit approaches the gates where there are no guards outside. With a wave of the figure's hand, the doors automatically open. It is best that I keep my force abilities hidden throughout the entirety of the takeover. Anakin thought within his head as he slowly walked down the hallways leading deeper inside to Jabba's throne room. Along the way, some droids behind at the entrance, while within his Vader suit, Anakin travels down the long corridors but is interrupted by the guards stationed all throughout. Gamorreans were everywhere. From Vader's left, right and center they continuously came at him. After finishing off all of the Gamorreans, where of course, he had only stunned them, not outright killing them, as he deemed it unnecessary because they were just employed guards. Grievous comes from behind Vader and sees the many unconscious bodies just laying on the floor piled up. I guess they did not want to talk then? When I got to them, we got into aggressive negotiations. Aggressive negotiations? I am guessing it is not peaceful. Sure it is. I just negotiate through some physical force as peacefully as possible. Grievous falls a step behind Vader as they both enter the metaphorical tiger's den, while leaving the droids outside to deal with any other intrusions. Some other droids went throughout Jabba's palace to look for imprisoned slaves or others who might be in need of some rescuing. Within Jabba's throne room there was a variety of people and things on display. Jabba would entertain guests in his throne room, which also had a live band led by the infamous Max Rebo. The style of the music currently being played was done by a band, called the Max Rebo Band, which was currently displaying their skills in the arts, performing jizz-style music. Quite a strange name for a music genre, but maybe that is just me. Vader thought to himself. Most of the people within didn't even notice Vader walk in, and continued with whatever they were doing. Most of the people present within the throne room were criminal scum, some with the worst of the worst records, but Jabba doesn't care for that. Gamorreans surround the exits and entrances but don't do anything much except identify threats and try to subdue them. Unfortunately, they aren't the best in keeping a Force-sensitive who has the ability to alter their minds through a mind trick and allow passage. The Jedi mind trick may be a bit dangerous, but I cannot deny its usefulness. A huge subterranean complex existed under the palace. The complex included Jabba's throne room, workshops, animal pens, Jabba's sail barge, and spice farms. While Anakin and Grievous were making themselves at home, the droids sent below were exploring and discovering the various things Jabba likes to collect. His animals, spice farms, and most important at least to Anakin were the workshops. Slaves were probably sent down to these areas to work laboriously. Jabba's palace was a monastery that belonged to the Bomar Order, a religious community who believed in isolating themselves from all physical stimuli to enhance their mental powers. The earliest parts of the monastery were underground, and included a mine. Anakin could tell from the left of pieces of the past that this place used to not be as ugly as it was now. After taking over the monastery, Jabba had it further fortified by master armorers. After presenting the hut with the bill for their services, the said armorers became the first prisoners of the crime lord. Despite having designed them all, they were never able to escape the thick walls and cruel traps of the palace. Anakin had deemed that these master armorers were to be made to atone for their sins by becoming free with some restrictions, specifically by helping the people here have enough homes constructed. After that had been done, they were free to leave. He would obviously pay them for their services, time and effort, but if they didn't work then they should be held accountable for working with a criminal empire, specifically run by Jabba. From what he understood, they had done everything of their own free will, and by that standard their actions should have consequences, which is why the punishment was not as severe as it could have been. In fact, now that I think about it, they have basically already suffered and been punished for whatever had happened when they chose to help Jabba. Karma to the Force in this instance seems to work in mysterious ways. Anakin changes his mind and would just let the workers get off scot-free, as they had already no doubt paid the time for their crimes. I would like to request an audience with the great Jabba the Hutt. Vader's modulated voice echoes throughout the room as he makes himself known. Grievous stays in the back watching on to intervene in case anything happens. I most humbly wish for an audience with one so great such as yourself. I have come to you with a proposition you must not refuse. A few Gamorreans here and there start to encircle Vader as the crowd watches in anticipation about what is to happen. It would be most wise of you to heed my words. Vader starts to increase the feel of his presence within the Force, making everyone within the room feel uneasy. Achu Apenki? Who are you? Jabba speaks in his native tongue. The master has asked you a question. Who are you? Jabba's servant, Bib Fortuna, helps translate for Vader. Vader breathes in and out, which creates a resonating sound throughout the room. I am Vader, and I have come here with a humble request. Jabba starts to laugh in a deep gruff tone. Chu Pawa Ki bargain? Some kind of bargain. The master asks, what is this deal you have come here for? I want you to free all of the slaves you own, to change the laws under your rule to better the society and people who come under you. Jabba starts to laugh again, this time in amusement. Ba Apanachi Wumpa Resistance? You are a part of the resistance. Jabba points to Vader. Sunto and kill P. Capture and kill him. The Gamorreans that were surrounding him started to move in as the crowd now starts to go wild at the entertainment. That didn't last very long. At least Jabba doesn't have his special pit created yet. Grievous behind jumps into action and speaks into a communication device. It's a go. Negotiations have failed and the Hutt can now be either chased away or if is captured can be ransomed. The reason Vader had decided that if he is able to capture Jabba it would be best to just sell him off back to somewhere else because the Hutts will just keep on coming. They are like a hydra, if one were to die, 10 more would take its place. We copy. Is everything ready and set for the EMP? Vader joins in on the conversation using his inbuilt nanosuit communications network. Roger, everything is set. We are now only waiting on the go. Vader dodges the Gamorreans, knocking most of them out in the process of now leaving the palace. It is a go. Chapter 39. V.1, C.39 Slave Rebellion v. It is a go. And with that allowance, a massive shift is felt by everyone as the air feels like static. Everyone pauses as the power goes down for a second before it is restored, and with confused expressions look around to what had happened. Time to free some slaves. Anakin then says out loud within his Vader persona. Everyone who you had enslaved and had allowed to be enslaved have now been freed. Start broadcast. Anakin had set up not only the special device meant to target the slave implants, but also a grand projector over everywhere possible so that everyone would be informed of what had just happened. This was done to ensure that the people who were enslaved and those who wanted to help come stand up and/or escape, because now would be the time. Vader, being uninterrupted while running outside of Jabba's palace, started up the broadcast system set in place. Residents of Tatooine, the slaves, the locals, the criminals, the scum and villainy. I have come here today to set a precedent among the Outer Rims. Vader in his modulated voice continues. For a long time many have been plagued by famine, by conflict and economic downturn. You freedoms and liberty stripped from your being, or you're being extorted because of the crime allowed here in the Outer Rims. Allowed here on Tatooine are things that should not be allowed. The restriction of your individuality. I say no more. Break your chains and rise up. Rise up and no more have to be ordered, to be used as amusement or entertainment for your masters, because they are no more than the same as you, as every other being that is living. Everyone here shall know freedom, and those who were the tormentors, the oppressors, shall be exiled from this planet, from this system. Vader cut the transmission after saying one more thing. I have declared that Jabba the Hutt is incompetent, so he shall be overthrown. Chaos erupted within the various settlements across Tatooine, with the capital of the planet being this most perilous. People that had slaves were now having to fight them off or trying to calm them down over what was just said. Not all slaves were as brave and obediently followed their master's orders even after the broadcast was shown. To reassure the more passive of the bunch, Anakin had miniature broadcasts running throughout displaying how and when others were rescued or freed. Grievous and Vader did not have to deal with much attention after everything had begun with Jabba leaving through an escape spaceship that he could have held back but didn't. There were no slaves on board with them, abandoning near everything, and everyone after the realization hit that they had no chance. Within the atmosphere, Vader had called on his droid army to create a blockade around the planet, but instead of stopping those who are leaving, he only intends to stop those who would like to enter. I think our time would be best used to help calm down the chaos within Mos Espa. Grievous states. That sounds like a great idea. Vader agrees. The two head off and jump onto their own speeders to make their way back to the capital of Tatooine. Out within the streets of Mos Espa, Vader had made his way there. War never changes. A lot of criminals had been starting to band together to start factions to start to gain control within the streets of Mos Espa. Unfortunately for them, most if not all of the buildings and land had been owned by either Anakin overtly or secretly. Criminal scum would not be able to hold up in much places, but there was an area everyone, at least those who were in on the action, gravitated towards. Droids were seen evacuating people, specifically those considered defenseless and were only recently freed. Confident slaves had made a break for it, but there were some held back, and that was what the droids were there for. To access and eliminate any threat that could harm innocents, and thankfully within their programming they are able to identify who were what would be considered enemies from allies and neutral people. A large amount of records had been kept through Anakin's network that every droid was able to connect to, allowing them to be efficient in the capture and seizure of individuals that were in the wrong. Vader was not after everyone who had done wrong on this planet, especially since it would take too long to get all of them in one swoop, so he had specifically set his droids on a path to hunt down slavers. They were his primary target after all. A few people are shot down as Vader uses his powers to subdue people, creating even more chaos, but that is only natural. He cannot save everyone. It was foolish for the original to think he could. Sufferings happens every minute, every second, and people die. Lots of people, and what Anakin wants to do is try to create an empire free from the sufferings people experience. But he isn't perfect, and mistakes can happen just as it does for everyone else. Vader notices a small commotion happening a distance away from him. Father, no. Don't be stupid. Put the gun away or you'll get us killed. Shut it, boy. These slaves need helping. I may be a drunkard, but even I know what is right from wrong, and I have had enough. But father. Enough, boy. I didn't tell you this, but your mother was a slave. Specifically, she was a runaway that was fortunate enough to not have that damnable implant stuck into her. And when she died giving birth to you, I promised to raise you right. The drunken man Vader had encountered the night prior was speaking towards his son. She was a slave? The lad asks, confused. Yes, and I think it is time I avenged her. She was so broken and beat down that it was a miracle she gave you to me. The man tears up and then his expression morphs into anger. I will help these people. For they are like my own, and are in fact a part of my life and yours. You stay at home, boy. Don't go getting hurt now. Well, that was an interesting piece of information, but I should probably get everything settled and round up all of the slavers first. Other criminals will probably go into hiding or leave the planet. Both are good enough for me, for now at least. Anakin thought to himself. Mos Eisley Cantina. Kalman Spaceport Cantina. While all the chaos was going on, a ragtag band of criminal scum had banded together to defeat the rebellious slaves. Not all criminals were stupid enough to group together like that, since they had seen the carnage brought down upon villains would resisted arrest. Hanging around a group of rowdy individuals would not do them any good and most certainly prolong the inevitable. Kalman Spaceport Cantina, also known as Kalman's Cantina, CC by the city militia, the Mos Eisley Cantina or simply the Cantina, was a popular drinking and dining establishment located in the city of Mos Eisley on the desert world of Tatooine. Now it had become overrun with slavers with their hired mercenaries, combat droids, or the like helping them defend themselves against the incoming slaughter. The owners of the bar had promptly left, not wanting to deal with what happens next. Hey! Help out over here. There are more droids coming from the front. Coming from the front. What the dash? The person was cut off from the sound of an explosion that rocked the building. Great, just great. Stupid low-life slaves rising up against us. They're betters. I was just in the middle of enjoying myself with one of my own before being interrupted. Shut up, no one cares. Right now we have hell to pay and the devil has come knocking. The rowdy bunch were frightened while the intelligent had tried to leave but were captured and rounded up elsewhere while the stupid holdouts were able to hold off for a bit longer. They very well might not live to see another day. After a while things seemed to calm down. Hours pass by with not a sound but the distant echoes of screams and cries from men and a few women. What did you think, all slavers were men? Slowly the people within the cantina had held out long enough. Had destroyed enough droids that had come after them to take a long-needed respite. The wind starts to pick up from the outside. The howls start to become unbearably loud and a deep breath could be heard. Modulated, synthesized, computerized and unnatural in its sound did it slowly make its way forward. What is that? Someone shouts. Quiet, you idiot. Another snaps at the idiot that made noise. From within everyone slowly starts to see a figure step out of the howling winds that brought up a cloud of dust. Cloaked in black, barely able to see anything or make out any features, but as it approaches they start to feel something. Something deep inside themselves telling them to run, to hide. To make sure the devil doesn't see them, doesn't hear then. The wind starts to become much more bearable and quiet. The dust and sand starts to settle. What is that monster? One of the slavers' eyes go wide open, shocked at the huge figure just outside their holdout. Electricity or lightning creeps around the being, starting to emit a bright light illuminating the features of what they would only describe as terrible, horrific as despite the humanoid cyborg made itself known was frightening. Slowly it walks towards them. Fire! Shoot at the fucker. At the slavers' command everyone starts shooting, the slavers and the mercenaries that hired them. But the shots are either absorbed by the figure, deflected or outright miss as if the shots were guided in another direction. Fuck. Pass me a drink. Most within have had a long day and had become drunk in the process but not to the point of being unable to fight back. While everyone was occupied, all but one noticed that their droids were not attacking the person that can be seen. Hey you. Stupid droid. Junk for parts can't even listen to simple directives. This person kicks the droid but what he doesn't expect is for the droid to stop the kick. The droid looks directly into the man's eyes and says something that completely terrifies him. Die. No one was none the wiser as they continued to shoot at the distraction. Why isn't it dying? What kind of monster is it? It is immortal, invulnerable. There is no being that cannot die. Keep firing until we got nothing left, and that should finish him. More and more they fired at the dark figure and as they do so, a cloud of dust, dirt, grime and sand obscure their view and the figure's lightning electric show of lights dimmed. Did we get him? Ha! See, I told ya. There was no way someone could survive an onslaught such as that. Everyone starts to get into a cheery mood raising their spirits but before they could have a mini celebration they noticed the air was clearing. The moons of Tatooine shine brightly and shine a light onto the figure revealing Vader in his full glory standing tall and floating above the air. Oh my! Someone lets out. Vader's voice was projected to the people within the cantina. I am amused by your efforts and praise your resilience as despite your terrible characters and lack of judgment you at least tried. I can say that is more than what a few had done before they had some terrible accidents. Now feeling the pressure everyone within is unsure of how to continue. And for your efforts I am willing to award you. Award you all I shall. You will let us go? One asks in a hopeful voice. Vader says nothing but lets a silence befall them all as the moonlight shines upon him and upon them all. Execute Order 69. Comes the chilling reply of Vader. The droids within along beside everything else as if a flick had switched pick up their weapons and point it towards everyone. Their supposed masters, allies of their masters and mercenaries that had decided to stay along with the slavers and worst of the worst criminals still left on Tatooine, unchecked. Blaster shots are fired and then chaos is once again ensued as from within the droids perfectly dealt with the nuisances inside. The droids from within start a chant that further terrifies those inside. Blood for the master. Over and over the chant continues. Punishment shall be given. None shall go unbent, unbroken, unjudged by the hand of our master. Blood for the master. They continuously chant as they slaughter the survivors of the initial backstab. After the deed had been done, the droids one by one got into formation and marched outside from within, creating a resonating sound with their metal appendages tapping the ground below them. All of them line up in front of their Lord, Lord Vader. Saluting, they stand tall and straight, which it seems impossible that they wouldn't, but nonetheless this was meant as a show of obedience and absolute loyalty. Lord Vader, the mission has been completed. All inside have been eliminated, exterminated, and the survivors were put out of their misery. Good, there is no need for unnecessary suffering even if they had deserved what had been done to them. Vader had a plan all those years ago when setting up Skywalker Industries, and it wasn't only to make his life and the life of his mother comfortable. It was for other goals and aspirations as well, this one in particular. The infiltration and cultivation of trust these slavers would have for their droids was meant to be used as a way that if need be would execute them when ordered. Vader had not needed them for a while now, as it had practically become useless up till this point. At least my miniature plan came to fruition, I guess. Chapter 40. V.1, C.40 Slave Rebellion 6. Jabba the Hutt had impressively escaped from the situation happening on Tatooine, or at least he thought he did. His swift retreat had not gone unnoticed by a lot of people given his stature and the stature of his people. How could he possibly be camouflaged or even get around the flaws of his form? What Jabba doesn't realize about his situation is what some would call fucked. Jabba is forced to leave what has amounted to the total accumulation of his life, the riches he had obtained, whether that be legal or otherwise, the palace he had built for himself to enjoy the rest of his life until the end of his days, the planet he had come into possession of, all of it was his, and he had people under him, under what he would say as his mighty and benevolent rule. He had basically lived the entirety of his life here on Tatooine, and had enjoyed the benefits of being such a prominent crime overlord, with a criminal empire of his own. Everyone asking him for favors, money, slaves, all sorts of things that he had in droves. Gone. Gone like the wind and dissolved into the sandy dunes of Tatooine. No. My things have not been thrown away by me, they have been taken. Stolen. I will get my revenge. The Bomar Order built a monastery on the planet in 670 years prior, which the bandit Alcara, who worked for the Bureau of Ethnicity and Socialization, used as a hideout in 520 years prior to current times. Shortly thereafter, 34 years after the bandit had been here, or 486 years prior, the notorious Jabba the Hutt chased Alcara out of his citadel of operations and claimed the Bomar Monastery for his personal palace and made it the center of his empire. 400 years I have spent here building my empire, I cannot simply give up on it. I will come back. Jabba's then stewed some more in his thoughts about the situation. The audacity of these stupid slaves of which I own, for them to go against me, blaming the slaves for the rebellion. He is not wrong, but the main cause for concern or the person who had started this all did not seem to be the target of Jabba's building hatred. No, Jabba could only fear the monstrous being that had come before him. Once made known that he was special in some way, Jabba had decided that he would just put a bounty out on the monster's head. Of course, after he had dealt with his current anger, Jabba moved over to a device within his personal bedroom on board his escape ship. This shall teach those low-life slaves a lesson. Pressing the button, Jabba laughs in glee, not realizing that what he had done had amounted to nothing. It was completely useless, but how would he know? Vader, having changed his mind about Jabba fleeing from the planet, intercepted Jabba before he could leave. My lord, it seems that we are surrounded. Jabba looks towards his attendant that had stuck with him with a disgruntled expression resting on his face. Chista ka. Bas boon ki hoha. Yuba cha cheese biagala and do hi 2p. Just go. Get around them. You don't be stupid and do what I say. Jabba insults the man in his native tongue. But my lord, surely you see that our situation is dire, and we must find a way out of this other than avoiding them altogether. I am afraid it wouldn't work. Jabba then decides that enough is enough. Just has his most favored right-hand man and servant killed. Kayasu. Yuba chu kachu. Enough. You die now. Bib Fortuna's face pales even more than what his skin complexion would be able to do because of his alien heritage. "No, my lord. Please forgive M-." Before Bib Fortuna could finish off his sentence, he was gunned down by the combat droids Jabba had control over. Jabba does not, in fact, laugh at the death of his subordinate and starts to regret that he had killed one of his supporters. "It doesn't matter to me anyway, there will be more in the future." But just like that, his guilt was absolved. "My lord." A droid came over to Jabba. "A communication request has come through. Cha Batabatu, Chista Bas Pushi Wumkuta. Don't bother, just get out of here right away." The droid walks off while Jabba goes back to playing with the device within his hand, laughing internally at what he thought he had done. While Jabba was occupied, Vader had already taken over the ship and was now trying to infiltrate the droids on board. "Once I have Jabba captured, I am sure he could be held for ransom, but if no one is willing to pay up, I guess he will just be executed for his crimes. No more little Rada. Or maybe there might be. Who knows?" Jabba may have had the chance to get laid before everything had begun. Vader had now taken not only Jabba's escape ship, but had also gotten control of the droids on board. All of them. Board them. Yes, sir. Some resistance fighters had joined him, knowing he was going after Jabba, practically jumping at the chance of capturing the big bad crime lord. How bloodthirsty. Vader on another ship is the first to approach and enter the connection point between both ships, and while doing so a droid rushes towards him with its weapon drawn. "Watch out, sir. The droid's going to hurt you." Someone yells out, ready to retaliate. Before anyone could shoot the droid down, Vader raises his hand, signaling them to stop. "It is okay, this droid, and in fact all the droids, are a plant created by me." Someone calls out from behind. Amazing forethought. Vader moves towards the droid. "Report." The droid responds. "Master, Jabba the Hutt has been confined to his sleeping quarters and is not aware of his current predicament." "Good, I will confront the beast myself." Vader moves past the droid with a few people looking confused behind him, joining his march towards the Hutt's quarters. "Everyone else must stay outside while I discuss some things with the Hutt." Vader turns back to everyone and states his command. The people seem hesitant but still go along with his plan. Entering, those from outside cannot see what is going on but do have a limited ability to hear what could be going on. There was some talking, and then Jabba's loud voice exclaiming from within with a somewhat startled cry before things go silent. Vader walks out of the room completely unharmed. No one can exactly tell what had happened, but know that Jabba should at the very least be beaten up. "We are good here. Secure the ship and let us get back down to Tatooine. We will deal with Jabba there." Back down on Tatooine, daybreak was happening, and situation was now not as chaotic. With order being restored by the plethora of droids patrolling the streets of the various outposts, settlements, and towns. Most of the people walking everywhere now were either the commoner folk that had nothing to do with the resistance, and the people whom had fought with or were a part of said slave resistance. Many families were properly reunited with loved ones, and the only deaths to occur were from criminals or slavers that resisted arrest. Friends were now starting to clean up the mess that had occurred, and many other things were happening to symbolize the start of a new civilization. The slavers that were successfully held captive were thrown into the jail cells specifically constructed on some of the ships from Anakin. "Boy, did you see me? I think I did your mother proud." The drunken man that was now sober said to his kid. "No, father, I did not. You told me to hide, remember, so I did." The father had forgotten what he said, and within the heat of the moment at that time, did not pay too much attention to himself or most of his surroundings. He was quite drunk himself at the time. The ship Vader was on started to land on the outskirts of Mos Espa, and upon arrival near, everyone disembarked to rejoin with everyone else. Now what? Vader had a lot of experience when it came to leadership in militaristic situations, but had little in the areas of politics, and now this would be the time for such a thing to start. The beginning of a new civilization hopefully ruled by him, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. He still needs to take care of Jabba. Vader had gone deep into Jabba's mind, scouring and devouring every memory of use to him while disregarding the rest. This had inadvertently caused Jabba to shut down, making him unconscious. This gave Vader even more of an easier time bisecting the mind of a being practically around 600 years of age. It was no easy task or small feat to accomplish, considering the many memories that would be benign or totally useless for him. What Vader wanted was the really special people he interacted with. The ones who were high up within whatever place they came from. The people who participated in and traded slaves. These were the people Vader had decided were to be put on his hit list. There were other criminals of minor significance that participated in and did things that were damaging to the lives of others. Of course, within every situation there is nuance, but Anakin cannot see any situation in which the depravity of another being's free will being right. Actions have consequences after all. Today we have fought and we have become victorious, but now we must discuss what happens next. What happens to the slavers we have now locked away, and what must be done with Jabba the Hutt. There are other things to approach with the situation here on Tatooine, and that is the situation we are in with our economy, the population and the other problems still present. First and most important would be the leaders to help guide everyone in the right direction. So people will be put into office with which their position stands. The culture and religion of our people is quite sparse but varied because of our upbringings, no doubt. I would hereby like to nominate people. Vader starts to list off people and to which departments of the new government would go to. Some leaders that come from the natives of the planet were chosen. Tuskens and Jawas were not discriminated against and would get at least one seat. They have been rather well behaved. Some people seem to have other things on their minds right now and would like to just go home and rest up, but Vader has to force his hand here to make sure everything goes as smoothly as possible. The rest of the meeting goes quite boring, but by the end of it, everyone has come to their supposed positions. Those who were excluded were done so because of a combination of factors. Vader had taken into account people's personalities, characters, skills, and background like culture or religion into account when selecting them for the right jobs. He had become the de facto leader of the new empire for now, but there was no true leader. Not one selected or voted into office anyway. There had been talks though that happened right after the confirmation, celebrations that led to some very wild ideas to appear given precedence to a new idea. A sort of royal family that everyone could agree on. The Skywalker royal family, to be exact. That was what everyone had started to call it, but Anakin was extremely confused as to how this came about. On one hand, it made sense that his mother or himself would be rewarded in some fashion, but not to outright become the ruling house of Tatooine. This does work out in his favor though, and could be used to his advantage, but he can't be here to oversee the entire process. He has other things planned and cannot be ruling over one planet when he would be doing so much more at a grander scale. He wouldn't mind the whole royal thing, but he as Anakin would not be able to keep the title because he is a Jedi. Technically in the future he can come back and plans to do so, but for now it would be of little use except to increase his influence. Not that I don't already control the people and beings of Tatooine. Anakin had also decided that he would be moving all of his droids, well, nearly all of them from Dathomir over to here, where they could help him make this place a utopia. It would not leave Dathomir defenseless, but he would also fulfill the agreement he has with Talzin. To let her gain full control of Dathomir, at least nearly full, as he would still be in control of many things over there, but that doesn't matter. What are we going to do with the Hutt? Grievous asks next to him. We are either going to sell him off or execute him, publicly. Vader says rather cruelly. The people would most likely want the second option, but I don't think you care either way. Not really. What happens next then? Well, Jabba now being deposed, it would only mean that would have to elect a leader. Someone who will represent the people, and what better person than you? Grievous cuts off. Not necessarily. Someone who can be cultivated into a good leader, but someone who at the same time would be subordinate to me. I have a few candidates, but to really nail this choice of mine down, a thorough screening process is needed. Makes sense. Then what about me? You can stay here for now. Your militaristic leadership skills will come in handy depending on who will think Tatooine is now an easy target. Vader says, but then continues. But I doubt anyone would want to take Tatooine. Unless the other Hutts want to do so themselves, no one else should come knocking. I have ideas on how to make the planet thrive, but for now I should deal with the aftermath. Anakin thinks to himself. Actions do have consequences.